Chapter 241. Do you know your wrongs? Zhu Yao glared at it. Oh, that demonic beast let out a wronged cry. Big sis Zhu Yao. Wang Xiuji glanced at that demonic beast, and then looked at Zhu Yao. His face was filled with disbelief. How can you? Why can't I? She still wanted to ask. After all, he was a sect master, right? Why did he have to be so polite to a domesticated beast? Wang Xiuji anxiously tugged onto her sleeves. Big sis Zhu Yao, he's roar. The demonic beast reverted to its old habits and roared at Wang Xiuji. Zhu Yao turned around and glared at it. Shut up. Oh. It instantly cowered. Zhu Yao raised her hand and slapped the beast's head. As a domesticated beast, you must be united and friendly, and get close to humans. If I ever see you bullying my little wimp again, I will skin you alive. Oh you. Its eyes were filled with tears. Also, don't follow me anymore. Otherwise I will really beat you up. The beastie was startled, as though it could no longer hold it in. Its tears flowed out like an open tap. Woo, the corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. You're still crying? The demonic beast trembled. Its tears stopped, but it choked. Cough. It burped. Why aren't you leaving yet? As it burped, it looked at her with sparkling tears. The moisture in its eyes grew larger and larger. Wah! It finally broke down. Scattering its little tears along the way, it ran into the forest and did not turn back. Ting! A familiar conversation window instantly popped up in front of her. Congratulations, you have achieved. Inhumanely harming a pure and innocent world guardian beast, shattering a pure beast heart. Title reward. Pui, you shameless human. Zhu Yao, that this was a curse, right? This was definitely a curse, right? Big sis Zhu Yao. Wang Xiuji looked at her with a tearless look. Just what was that? She was just an innocent bystander who did not know the truth. Hey, Big sis Zhu Yao, before you entered spiritual realm, you have never seen Sovereign Bai Yuan? Wang Xiuji said strangely. I only saw that strange beast in ancient Azure Sect's forest, and I was almost swallowed. How is this possible? Wang Xiuji was shocked. Exalted Bai Yuan is the guardian beast of the entire spirit realm. Without his permission, no one can enter the spirit realm from the underworld. Big sis Zhu Yao, just how did you come to spiritual realm? It sounded impressive, but I flew directly from the sky and came here. Who knew that he needed a beast's permission? Wang Xiuji was even more shocked. But when crossing worlds, there's a section of the Abyss of Eternity. Didn't Big sis Zhu Yao see it? Is there such a thing? I didn't see it. According to Wang Xiuji, there was a place called the Abyss of Eternity between the spirit world and the netherworld. It was a land of death, and anything that entered would be devoured, including souls. The only way to safely pass through was to be led by the realm guardian beast, Bai Yuan. As for what beast it was, where did it come from? How strong were they? No one knew. But everyone who entered the spiritual realm was led by it. Even more so, no one knew what rank demonic beast it was. The only thing they knew was its name, Bai Yuan. It had an irreplaceable position in spiritual realm. No matter how arrogant and cool a human practitioner was, they had to respectfully address it as exalted Bai Yuan. And it was precisely because of this that the relationship between human practitioners and demonic beasts in spiritual realm was especially harmonious. Zhu Yao was a little dumbfounded when she heard this. She was simply unable to connect that demonic beast with such a high and mighty position earlier. Rather than calling it a guardian beast, Zhu Yao felt that it was more like a mascot for the entire spiritual realm. The kind that guaranteed safe entry and exit. Exalted Bai Yuan has always been casual, and would often wander around the various sects or stay for a short period of time. Wang Xiuji explained. Back when the Ghost King appeared, the reason why I went to the netherworld was coincidentally because Exalted Bai Yuan was in my ancient Azure sect. She seemed to have offended some incredible beastie. Spiritual realm is different from other cultivation worlds. No matter if one ascends to the higher realm or enters the netherworld, Bai Yuan's permission is required. Otherwise, one will fall into the abyss of eternity. If it's light, one's soul will be sent flying, and if it's heavy, one will never reincarnate. The more Zhu Yao listened, the more guilty she felt. Though exalted by Yuan is in beast form, I heard that he has existed in this world ever since the birth of spiritual realm, and his strength is unfathomable. Little wimp. Amen? Say, is it too late for me to apologize to him right now? Evidently, it was too late, because that beast had already disappeared without a trace a long time ago. Forget it. In any case, it was not the first or second time she offended that beast. Furthermore, was it really appropriate to set up such a high and mighty demonic beast? The god race expressed their dissatisfaction. After walking for another half an hour, the sky suddenly darkened, and the spiritual energy in the air had thinned to an inconceivable degree. It was as though the further they went, the lesser the spiritual energy. Big Sis Zhu Yao. Wang Xiuji suddenly spoke up. Amen. When she turned to look, she saw that he was suddenly sweating profusely. His face was pale, and he looked like he was in pain. Little wimp, what's wrong? Zhu Yao was shocked, as she hurriedly supported him to sit down. Wasn't he still fine earlier? Wang Xiuji shook his head. With a weak look, he still pointed to the front and said, Big Sis Zhu Yao, the land at the end of the sky should be right in front of us. Zhu Yao took a closer look, and saw a large area that looked like a chasm had appeared in the sky. It was as though a green forest had been forcefully cut off. One side was lush with greenery, while the other was empty. Nothing could be seen clearly, and the surroundings were strangely quiet, as though all the sounds in the world had disappeared. Zhu Yao separated a strand of spiritual energy to press on his meridians, and a moment later, she suddenly widened her eyes. Why did the resentment in your body suddenly become chaotic? I don't know either. Wang Xiuji shook his head. It's just that the closer we get to the land at the end of the sky, the more restless the resentment in my body becomes. Zhu Yao's heart sank. Could it be that the land at the end of the sky really had something that could affect resentment? Calming her heart, she cast an art to first help Wang Xiuji suppress his resentment. For a moment, she was a little hesitant as to whether she should continue forward. Big Sis Zhu Yao. Since we're actually here, we definitely have to find out the truth. Wang Xiuji said. Don't worry, I'm fine. At a time like this, why are you still trying to act tough? Shut up. Zhu Yao knocked on his head. With your current state, even if we enter, you'll only be a burden to me. He lowered his head. All right, I'll first head over there to take a look. If the resentment in your body goes berserk again, then head back first. There's no need to wait for me. But no buts. Zhu Yao glared at him. He's that perverted. That empty space was less than 100 meters away from them. Initially, she did not feel it, but as she approached it, Zhu Yao felt a sense of pressure. Even the spiritual energy in her body was uncontrollably scurrying about, as though it was about to break out of her body. Her chest felt incredibly stuffy, as though she was about to suffocate. Even though she was clearly in a dense forest, strong winds were blowing in her surroundings, causing her to feel chills. She was beginning to feel that something was amiss. The wind was blowing even stronger, causing her cheeks to hurt. With every gust, her body would feel colder, as though she did not have any spiritual energy to resist the cold. Wait a minute, spiritual energy. Zhu Yao was startled. Circulating the spiritual energy in her body, she realized that there was not much spiritual energy left in her dantian. That wind was actually able to disperse the spiritual energy in her body. Zhu Yao immediately increased her speed and dodged into the forest. However, as though the wind had eyes of its own, it immediately changed its direction and blew straight towards her. Big Sis Zhu Yao. Wang Xiuji realized her abnormality as well, and chased after her. Don't get hit by the surrounding wind, Zhu Yao loudly reminded. The wind will disperse the spiritual energy in your body. Little Wimp's footsteps paused, and he reacted. In an instant he changed his direction, dodging the incoming wind. For a moment, the two of them had no choice but to jump up and down in this forest. But wind was formless and intangible, and was basically impossible to capture. They could only dodge based on their instincts. It was still all right in the beginning, but after a long time, she would eventually be blown away. Zhu Yao could already feel the meager amount of spiritual energy in her body. She dodged here and there, and unknowingly, She was getting closer to that empty space, until she could no longer circulate a single strand of spiritual energy in her body. When she dodged, her feet stepped on empty air. She suddenly realized that she had already reached the very edge. Beside her feet was a bottomless chasm, and behind her was a land of nothingness. Zhu Yao took in a cold breath. Mamma mia! Fortunately she stopped in time, otherwise she would have fallen down. Fortunately, suddenly, a white figure leapt out from the forest and pounced straight towards her. A familiar beast's roar resounded in her ears, along with Little Wimp's terrified voice. Zhu Yao's entire body was thrown backwards, and she fell straight into that empty space. The hell? A phrase could not help but surface in her mind. It's never too late for a beastie to take revenge 10 years later. My ass. Just what kind of grudge did she have with this demonic beast? Zhu Yao fell into that empty space at the end of the sky, and she even received a stupid beast as a scapegoat. That empty space was very deep, and she felt as though her entire body was about to fall apart. Every single bone in her body was creaking in pain, yet the culprit beast was completely fine. Probably because it had gotten its revenge. It circled around her for a few rounds. It was so happy that it was jumping up and down, and its mouth was even letting out excited sounds. Oh you. I'm down, I'm finally down. That voice was soft, just like a child's. After circling a few rounds, it actually began to roll on the ground. Shut up. Zhu Yao fiercely glared at it. She spent a great deal of effort to sit up, and she did not think about why it suddenly knew how to speak. She simply felt that it was making her hurt even more. As expected, Bai Yuan stopped, and obediently sat next to her. Its gigantic white beast head stretched over, and its two bell-sized black eyes stared straight at her. Yao, what? Zhu Yao was shocked, as she had a bad premonition. That pair of eyes, however, grew brighter, and the soft voice once again sounded. I want to kiss you. Ah. Bai Yuan widened its mouth, and with an ahu sound, it sucked Zhu Yao into its mouth. It grinded her up and down a few times, and with a pu sound, it spat out a Zhu Yao whose entire body was covered in saliva. Wiping off the sticky saliva, Zhu Yao's hands trembled. She felt that the string called reason had snapped straight, and was currently letting out creaking sounds that were about to snap. Bai Yuan, who had smeared her face with saliva earlier, licked its lips, and its beast face scrunched up into a ball. Turning its head, it retched. Hair stuck. After retching for a moment, it turned its head around with a wronged look. I didn't wash my hair. Bada. Her reason completely collapsed. Wash your sister. She grabbed onto its shining white beast head, grabbed onto the whiskers at the side of its mouth, and fiercely pulled them out. What qualifications do you have to despise me? This old lady here has yet to settle the debt of pushing me down with you. You actually dare to despise me? Who asked you to despise me? Who asked you to despise me? You're the one who didn't wash your hair. You didn't even wash your hair at home. Oh you. Bai Yuan let out a series of miserable cries, and began to roll on the ground. Its claws waved about in the air, yet it did not dare to wave them at her. Only after Zhu Yao had completely pulled out all of its whiskers, did it finally kick open its meaty beast body, and stopped while panting heavily. Bai Yuan used its front claws to cover its beast mouth, which was already swollen, and laid on the ground like a quail. Its eyes were filled with accusations towards her evil deeds. What the hell are you looking at? Zhu Yao glared at it, as she wanted to flare up the moment she saw it. Ugh. You're not allowed to cry. Its cries instantly stopped, turning into suppressed sobs. Zhu Yao could not be bothered with it, as she carefully inspected her surroundings. It was completely dark, as though the heavens and the earth had become one. She did not see the revival dialogue box, which proved that she was still alive. However, where was this place? The end of the world? Why was there nothing here? Staying here wasn't a solution either. Taking a deep breath, she dragged her aching body and walked forward step by step. Earlier, she had tried it, and her body did not have a single strand of spiritual energy. Not only that, she could not even sense the existence of spiritual energy. This proved that her cultivation had regressed, and it had regressed back to before, turning into a regular mortal. That strange wind earlier did not blow away the spiritual energy in her body, but her cultivation. With her current situation, if she did not find a way out, she would starve to death here. She walked aimlessly for half a day, yet, she did not discover anything. The surroundings were abnormally quiet, and the only sounds she could hear were the sounds of breathing. 2 breaths. Why are you following me? Zhu Yao turned around and glared behind her. A certain beast which maintained a distance of 5 steps trembled. Its large eyes still had traces of tears that had yet to dry. It weakly glanced at her, and then, it hurriedly sprinted towards her. A white paw was placed horizontally in front of her, and it looked as though it was facing death with equanimity. I'll pluck. Paw for more. It raised its paw again, as large tears filled its eyes. Pluck fur, don't go. What did he mean? He wanted her to continue plucking its fur? You're a masochist, right? Seeing that she did not make a move after a long while, it grew anxious, as it forcefully stuffed its paw into her bosom. Pluck. Pluck, by Yuan won't hurt. After plucking, we'll be friends. Don't ignore me. Why did she feel a sense of guilt as though she was bullying a little kid? Be friends, all right? It sniffled, as though it was trying its best not to cry. It then used its paw to push her hand. I'll let you pluck. If it's not enough, I still have 3 more paws. Chapter 242. Looking at the snow-white claw in front of her, the fury in Zhu Yao's heart instantly disappeared completely. She took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in her heart. She knew that her emotions were not right. Her anger towards Bai Yuan was mostly just to vent her anger. Her master had fainted. The resentment in little Wimp's body had not been dispelled, and he had even fallen into this damned place with his cultivation completely destroyed. Under such circumstances, not to mention having a good temper, she was so irritable that she wanted to kill someone, all right? Therefore, even though she knew that Bai Yuan had no ill intentions towards her, she still couldn't control her anger. Moreover, it was it that had pushed her down. I'm sorry. Zhu Yao sighed, and reached out her hand to pat on its beast head. Bai Yuan, let's talk about life. Oh. It looked at her with its big watery eyes, then at its paws. Claw. I'm not going to pull it out. It was already like this. How could she still pull it out? Its misty eyes became clearer. It put down its claws and carefully squatted next to her. Where should I start? Why do you keep following me? Bai Yuan stepped on his front paws a little helplessly, and said with a stutter. I like Yao Yao. I said before friends must be. Its huge head drooped lower and lower, and it looked a little bashful. Zhu Yao was actually able to see a hint of shyness and timidity on that furry face. She must be blind. Then why did you push me off? What kind of friend are you? It replied very quickly. Because I have to take you to see it. Look. Zhu Yao blinked. Look at what? Bai Yuan stood up with a whoosh and ran a few steps towards the left. Then he eagerly ran back. Let's go take a look. Let's go take a look. Wait a minute. Zhu Yao followed. What are you bringing me to see? Yao Yao, come. Come quickly, it's right in front. Apparently, it already had this plan. It jumped and jumped excitedly, leading the way in front. Look. What are you looking at? A thought flashed in Zhu Yao's mind. You've been here before? Roar. It nodded its head. Then do you know the way out? Bai Yuan knows. It puffed out its chest, its face filled with pride. Would it kill you to say so earlier? She thought she was going to die here. She was currently using her original avatar. Her heart would ache if she died, all right? Are you familiar with this place? Bai Yuan knows everything about this place. It hopped in front, leading the way. Is there any person or item here that can dispel resentment? Human? Bai Yuan paused for a moment, tilted his head to look at her, and said with some embarrassment, There's only one person here. Ooh. There really was someone. It seemed that this trip was not in vain. I'll bring you there. Bai Yuan happily ran in front. Zhu Yao did not waste any time either, and immediately followed after him. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, a ray of light suddenly appeared in the dusky sky, and a thin silver-white line appeared in front of them. It was a long line that extended infinitely, as if it had split the world into two. When she got closer, she realized that it was actually a river. It was silvery white in color, and the river was so wide that she couldn't see the end of it. She had only seen such a peculiar river once. River of Forgetfulness? Why would the River of Forgetfulness appear here? Had she returned to the netherworld? But the style was evidently not right. Bai Yuan changed his direction and ran a few steps upstream. Let's head up, at the source. We'll be there soon. Source. This river was so wide, she did not even know how far the so-called source was. It was still fine in the past, but now that she did not have the slightest bit of cultivation, she would probably die, right? Zhu Yao followed after it in despair, and instantly felt that her footsteps had become several tons heavier. We're here. So fast. She had only walked for 10 minutes, right? Zhu Yao raised her head to look, and on the surface of the river in front of her, a gigantic white palace had appeared, spanning across the entire River of Forgetfulness. That palace was extremely gorgeous, and every single part of it seemed to be built using the purest white stones. From afar, it looked like a snow-white curtain that was hung in the sky, and it was a little dazzling to the eyes. It's so white, I'll get snow blindness, right? Zhu Yao silently retorted. Bai Yuan, the person you spoke of lives here? Oh, then how do we get there? That palace was floating on the surface of the river, and she did not know how to swim. Fly, fly, Aoo! Bai Yuan roared. He suddenly rose into the sky and flew towards that palace. Wait a minute. Bring me along, I don't know how to fly, hey. Bai Yuan had already turned into a ray of white light and disappeared in an instant. What happened to the promise of being friends? Looking at the vast river surface, Zhu Yao felt like crying. Just as she was hesitating if she should use the dog paddle style to swim over, a green dot suddenly appeared in the river, and it was especially obvious on the snow-white river surface. The green dot grew larger, and when she took a closer look, it was actually a flower bud. Zhu Yao took 2 steps forward, and that flower bud suddenly bloomed. It grew larger and larger, and in the end, it turned into a lotus the size of a wash basin. And above the lotus at the center, a golden arrow was floating. Was it telling her to step on it? Using her feet to test the waters, Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment before taking a step onto it. She never expected that this lotus would be so sturdy. Forget about falling, it did not even sway, and was as stable as flat ground. She did not know what breed it was, but Zhu Yao had the urge to transplant it back. The moment she stood still, another lotus bloomed a step away from her. Could it be that this lotus was a chain store? Zhu Yao stepped over with a heart filled with doubts. Hence, with every step she took, a lotus like this would bloom in front of her. As though it was paving a path, it bloomed all the way to the palace in the middle of the river. She arrived in front of the palace without any obstructions. The moment she stepped onto the stone steps, the row of lotuses behind her instantly withered and fell into the river bottom. This should be some sort of wood-type formation. Zhu Yao walked onto the stone steps, and the entire white palace was in front of her. It stood tall and majestic, emitting a majestic aura. The strange thing was, it was strangely quiet. Forget about people, not even a fly could be seen in the surroundings. Bai Yuan, who came up first, where did he run off to? Running into someone else's territory just like that. She wondered if it would attract the owner's disgust. Passing through the plaza in front of the palace, Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment and decided to greet him. Is there anyone here? Complete silence. She could not help but raise her hand to knock on that large door. Initially, she thought that there would not be any response, but that large white door suddenly rumbled and slowly opened inwards. The interior of the palace was snow-white as well. Zhu Yao walked in and saw a tall platform at the innermost side of the palace. A man was currently sitting on the only chair on the tall platform. He was dressed entirely in white, and even his hair was silvery white. Seeing her enter, he revealed a set of white teeth with a slight smile. Zhu Yao subconsciously turned her head. Just how much did this person like the color white? Her eyes were about to be blinded by it. Ho, hi. Zhu Yao habitually greeted him. You're here. A voice that was as warm as water resounded. Even though the voice was not loud, it felt as though it was right next to her ears. and it was clearly transmitted into the depths of her heart. Zhu Yao faintly felt that this voice was a little familiar, yet she could not recall where she had heard it before. You know me? His smile deepened. Zhu Yao, I have been waiting for you. Ah, waiting for me? What did he mean? He stood up and walked down from the tall platform. Only then did Zhu Yao see his appearance clearly. Sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. Though he was not a peerless beauty, for some reason he gave off a gentle feeling. Realm Spirit said that you're the only person who can help me. You know Realm Spirit. Zhu Yao was stunned. After fixing so many bugs, this was the first time she heard an NPC know of Realm Spirit's name. He paused for a moment, and then slowly nodded. I guess I know him. What do you mean by guess? Do you know who he is? Where is he? Why do you need me to fix this bug? His smile grew even gentler. You will know in the future. The hell, it's as good as not saying anything. What do you mean by I can help you? His expression sank. Suddenly, he reached out a hand, and a black miasma formed from the letters bug appeared in his palm. Resentment. Zhu Yao seemed to recognize it at first glance. Why is it here as well? Could it be? You're the person who eliminated the Ghost King that day? You're able to remove resentment. No. He shook his head. Clenching his fist, the resentment instantly disappeared. I'm merely temporarily locking it down. Locking it down? Resentment is formless and undying. Even if it's me, I can only temporarily lock it down. He frowned. But the amount of resentment in this world will only increase. In the beginning, it was still fine, but millions of years have passed. Even if it's me, there will come a day when my strength is exhausted. Millions of years. Zhu Yao caught onto a keyword. Did he mean to say that he had already existed for millions of years? That was the beginning of the world, when even the ancient gods did not exist. He had already existed back then? Just who in the world are you? That gentle smile still hung on his face, and he softly said, My name is River of Forgetfulness. River of Forgetfulness. Zhu Yao suddenly widened her eyes. Ho ho, it can't be that River of Forgetfulness, right? He waved his hand, and in an instant the entire white hall disappeared. Beneath their feet was the silvery white River of Forgetfulness, and they were currently floating above the surface of the river. The man softly said, It's just as you think. I'm this River of Forgetfulness. Zhu Yao felt as though her brain had crashed. River of Forgetfulness. He was River of Forgetfulness. This river was asking her for help. What could she do? Wash away sand? Since the beginning of the world, I have been in this underworld, erasing the imprints of all living beings in this world, restoring the original appearance of the soul. River of Forgetfulness continued. However, some of these imprints can be erased, while some cannot. Resentment can't? He nodded. Resentment affects the soul, and a soul that carries resentment will recall the matters of its past life. If resentment does not dissipate, it will cause many unforeseen events, causing the collapse of this world. That's why I cannot allow resentment to remain in my soul. However, even if it leaves my soul, it will still not dissipate. I can only seal it. He once again waved his hand, and the silvery river suddenly split into two, revealing the bottom of the river. However, she saw that the bottom of the river was filled with a deep darkness, and it was so dense that it could not be seen how deep it was. The deep darkness was constantly tumbling, and occasionally, a strand of it would appear. Zhu Yao took a closer look, and that black color was densely filled with the word bug. The bottom of the river was actually filled with resentment. Just how many years did this terrifying amount of resentment accumulate for? Beneath such a pure river water was actually a place to seal resentment. River of Forgetfulness lowered his hand, and the surface of the river once again closed up, returning to its original silvery white color. He turned his head and looked at her with a gentle expression, starlight flashing in his eyes. Why are you looking at me with such hope? I really don't know how to dispel resentment. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here to look for you. Since Realm Spirit said you can do it, then naturally you really can. River of Forgetfulness said with a confident look. But I don't know anything about resentment at all. Otherwise, little wimp would have been fine a long time ago. He shook his head. You don't know right now, because the time isn't right yet. Then when will the time be right? He smiled, and did not reply. Instead, he looked at her with an even more focused gaze. You can do it. Don't be so confident in me. What if I go overboard? Before that day arrives, I will continue to wait. He raised his hand, and a formation instantly appeared beneath her feet. Zhu Yao felt her body lightening, and the formation brightened. Wait a minute. She had yet to finish her question. I still have something to do. In the next moment, she was surrounded by white light, and a faintly discernible voice sounded in her ears. Don't worry. The person you're concerned about has nothing to do with resentment. Big sis Zhu Yao. Little wimp's voice sounded in her ears. Her waist tightened, and in the next moment she had already risen into the sky. Wang Xiuji brought her several meters away, and said with a worried look, Big sis Zhu Yao, are you alright? I'm fine. Zhu Yao turned around to look. She had once again returned to that chasm at the end of the sky. How can you stand there? It's too dangerous. What if you fall in? Little wimp said with a worried look. Fall in? Zhu Yao widened her eyes. Didn't she already fall in? This place is too dangerous. The wind can actually scatter spiritual energy. It's not advisable to stay here for long, he suggested with a stern look. Zhu Yao felt that it was a little strange. She had clearly fallen in for so long, so why did little wimp look like he did not know about it at all? Could it be that the flow of time in the land at the end of the sky was different from in spiritual realm? She suddenly felt that there was something in her hands. Lowering her head to take a look, it was a silvery white pearl, which looked extremely similar to the color of that palace. What was this? Was this given to her by River of Forgetfulness? She clenched her fists, only to realize that her cultivation had once again recovered. Big sis Zhu Yao, it seems like there's no way to eliminate resentment here. Let's head back? She nodded, and followed Wang Xiuji back to Ancient Azure Sect. Regarding the bug this time, she finally had some clues. Previously, she had always thought that it was that Ghost King, or the resentment on that Ghost King's body. Only now did she realize that Realm Spirit wanted her to eliminate all resentment. Under the River of Forgetfulness, the accumulated resentment for billions of years, if it were to rush out, not only the underworld, the entire 3 realms would be affected. This was basically a super huge bug. Yet, she did not have the slightest clue as to the specific solution. This wasn't like making a game, where one could simply delete the game if they encountered a problem. Most likely, even Realm Spirit himself did not know how to solve it, otherwise he wouldn't have left it alone for so long. She felt that she had encountered the biggest problem ever since she transmigrated. Her master still had not woken up, and Little Wimp's situation was worsening. The resentment in his body was beginning to go out of control, and it was rampaging in his meridians, causing his spiritual energy to be unable to gather, and even endangering his dantian. This caused him to once again fall into unconsciousness. Chapter 243. ZMO had been the sect master for his entire life. No, he was the sect master for 2 lifetimes. It had always been smooth sailing. Although he did not ascend the immortal Tao, he was satisfied. Every single disciple in his sect had great trust in him, and the sect he was in was becoming more prosperous with each passing day. No matter if it was the cultivation world of the past, or the current spiritual realm, as long as the name ZMO was mentioned, there would not be anyone who would not raise their thumbs up and praise him, saying that he was the best. However, in such a perfect human life, there were 2 variables, and they were variables that even death could not shake off. That's right, it was the master and disciple duo on Jade Forest Mountain. Little Marshal Uncle, the method you mentioned is really inappropriate. ZMO said with a heavy heart. Let's not talk about whether or not you're able to draw out the resentment in Shuji's body. Even if you succeed, with your current cultivation, it will only be worse than his. When the resentment goes berserk, it will be uncontrollable. You have to have confidence in me. Zhu Yao patted on ZMO's shoulders. This wasn't a matter of confidence. It was a matter of whether or not you were going to throw your life away. Little Marshal Uncle, It's not that I want to make things difficult for you. Xuji is my disciple, so I'm naturally extremely anxious as well. But if I were to get you involved because of a moment of impatience, then the loss would outweigh the gain. Don't worry, I'll be careful. Resentment is extremely dangerous. It's not something that can be resolved just by paying attention to it. Little martial uncle, I absolutely won't agree to you guiding Xuji's resentment into your own body. Oh. Zhu Yao replied especially seriously. I'm not asking for your opinion either. He took an arrow to the knee. Jade Forest Mountain disciples and whatnot, he hated them the most. Zmo wanted to cry, but no tears came out. If he really allowed her to guide resentment into her body, when ancestral grand uncle wakes up, he would kill him, right? It definitely would. Thinking of a certain person's frosty expression, he couldn't help but shiver. In an instant, he felt that the room had become much colder. Steeling his heart, he pulled Zhu Yao. Little martial ant. No matter what, you can't commit suicide like this. If you insist on doing so, I will die in front of you. Then die. Zhu Yao was getting a little annoyed by his pestering as well. Why don't you try and die? Zmo was stunned, and for a moment he did not know how to continue. Zhu Yao helped Wang Xuji up from the bed, and sat cross-legged behind him. Seeing that he still looked as though he had suffered a huge blow, she sighed. Old man, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. He took out the white pearl from his bosom and handed it over. If I also fall into a deep sleep like little wimp, help me pass this to my master. This was given to her by the river of forgetfulness. She could not tell what it was, but she faintly felt that it might be useful to her master. Zmo received it, and seemed like he still wanted to say something. Zhu Yao had already closed her eyes, and circulated her spiritual energy into Wang Xuji's meridians. She had been a game designer in the modern world for so many years. The number of bugs she had fixed was more than the number of deaths she had experienced. She didn't believe that this so-called resentment could not be eliminated. As long as it was a bug, there would definitely be a patch that could be patched. As the saying goes, as long as the hoe is wielded well, there is no wall that cannot be dug down. Oh, what's wrong? But to fix it, one must first know where the loophole is. That was why she wanted to draw the resentment on Little Wimp's body onto herself. Only by deeply understanding the composition of resentment would she be able to find a way to deal with it. Shinong, on the other hand, had to taste hundreds of herbs to know the effects of medicine, didn't he? Taking a deep breath, Zhu Yao continued to circulate her spiritual energy, probing Little Wimp's meridians. From the Divine Palace all the way to the Dantian, there was only pure fire spiritual energy in his body. Only when she neared the Dantian did she faintly discover strands of black miasma. That black miasma and fire spiritual energy were intertwined together, and with just a single step, they would converge towards the source of spiritual energy, the Dantian. At the entrance of the Dantian, there were a few rows of talismans floating, preventing the black miasma from entering. It was no wonder Little Wimp fainted. If this resentment were to enter the Dantian, if she were to forcefully expel it, the Dantian would definitely shatter, and her cultivation would be completely destroyed. Most likely, Little Wimp's remaining consciousness had been used to stop this black miasma. Zhu Yao no longer hesitated, and immediately guided the black miasma over. However, it was useless. That black miasma seemed to have died on Little Wimp's body, and did not even bother to care about her. The hell, you're filled with resentment, and you're actually valuing men over women? With a thought in her mind, she instantly materialized several thin lightning bolts, and with a series of crackling sounds, they struck together with the fire spiritual energy, instantly scattering the black miasma. Although she could not remove it, it was still possible to strike it to the point where it could not retaliate. The moment the black miasma scattered, Zhu Yao immediately used her spiritual energy to envelop it, and kept it together. Initially, she had wanted to first control this resentment, and then slowly deal with it. However, the moment the resentment that she had scattered earlier entered her meridians, it was as though it was injected with adrenaline, and began to wander around her body wantonly. It was clearly so quiet on Little Wimp's side, so why was it convulsing the moment it entered her body? Zhu Yao did not manage to control it, and her meridians flowed in the opposite direction, causing her to puke out a mouthful of blood. Pwah! Little martial ant. Zmo was shocked, as he hurriedly sprinted over. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth, taking advantage of the fact that the resentment had yet to swim to her dantian. She used all of the spiritual energy in her body to seal the surroundings of her dantian. As expected, the resentment had already swam to the vicinity of her dantian, and was unable to advance even an inch further. Just as Zhu Yao was about to heave a sigh of relief, the black miasma that had finally stopped suddenly turned around, and immediately tunneled into her divine sense. The hell, this plot development was clearly not going according to the script. Because all of the spiritual energy in her body was protecting her dantian, the black miasma seemed to be able to directly enter her divine sense without any obstructions. Zhu Yao's vision instantly darkened. Mama's egg, I've gone too far. For a moment, Zhu Yao could not sense her own existence, and there was only a thick darkness. Her surroundings were oppressive to the point where she could barely breathe. There seemed to be something in the depths of her heart, as though it was trying to break out. Immediately after, the scene in front of her changed, and she suddenly saw a place with verdant hills and limpid waters. Large patches of fresh flowers bloomed, filling the entire ground. The sky was filled with multicolored light, and auspicious clouds could be seen everywhere. A white-clothed woman stood in the middle of the flowers, and slowly turned her head around. Zhu Yao took in a deep breath. That was a shockingly beautiful face. The number of beauties Zhu Yao had seen in the cultivation world were as many as the hairs on a cow, and the humanoid figures of the god race were even more heaven-defying beautiful. However, none of them could compare to this woman. Whatever beauty that could captivate the birds and beasts, eclipse the moon and put flowers to shame, they all seemed crude when used on her. If she really had to use a phrase to describe her, then she could only say that she was too goddamn beautiful to the point of being inhuman. That beauty looked straight at her, and suddenly gave a light smile. In an instant, it was as though the flowers on the ground, and the multicolored light in the sky had all lost their colors. Why? She suddenly spoke up, as though she was doubtful, yet also as though she was questioning. Why? Why? She asked again and again, and each of her words was deeper than the last. The expression on her face grew more and more desperate, as though a beautiful scene had suddenly faded away. A ghastly crack suddenly appeared on her peerlessly beautiful face. It spanned across her entire face, and there were even traces of blood seeping out from it. Her white clothes were slowly dyed red as well. In a blink of an eye, a beautiful fairy had turned into a demon from hell. Even the hundreds of flowers on the ground were slowly withering, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Zhu Yao trembled from fright. The scene, however, changed, and instantly changed into another scene. Next, she saw the life of a pitiful girl. The transmission method was exactly the same as the story mode in the past. The girl was called Ing Luo, and was said to be a descendant of the ancient god race. However, this girl was a little unlucky. She was abandoned when she was young, and was picked up by a pair of human traffickers. She was often sold here and there. She could not eat her fill, nor could she wear warm clothes. After much difficulty, she finally grew to the age of 10, and encountered a deity sect that wanted to take her in as a disciple. However, because she possessed the worst pentaspirit veins, when she entered the deity sect, she was arranged to do odd jobs in the outer sect. Though her luck was a little bad, she possessed the bloodline of the god race, and cultivation was completely effortless. Basically, she would be able to learn anything the moment she learned it. And because of this, she attracted the jealousy of her fellow disciples, who knew how many times she suffered in the dark. After much difficulty, she finally built her foundation, and her days became a little better. She was taken in as a disciple by an Azoth practitioner in the inner sect. She also officially entered the center of power in the cultivation world. Because of her spirit veins in the beginning, everyone did not think highly of her. However, she was diligent in her studies. In a short 10 years, she cultivated to the foundation paragon level. A mere pentaspirit veins holder actually possessed a cultivation speed that was comparable to the heavenly spirit veins. Naturally, it attracted the suspicion of others. There were even people who felt that she possessed a mystical treasure. even if she did not do anything, she still attracted a huge amount of hatred. The moment she stepped out of the door, someone would occasionally pop out to stab her with a sword, or cut her with a blade. And among these hatred, there was even her master who was stuck at the Azoth core stage for 100 years. Initially, this Azoth practitioner did not take her in as a disciple willingly either. However, according to the sect's rules, all Foundation disciples had to enter the inner sect. Ying Luo belonged to the category of one who was forcefully shoved into the inner sect, because the number of students she recruited did not meet the requirements. Hence, this Azoth practitioner really did not plan on teaching her anything diligently, and simply threw a few manuals to her. In the end, his disciple was enlightened, and her cultivation speed was even faster than his own, and she was about to surpass his own Azoth core. Her master could not take it anymore. Both in the open and in the dark, he pressured this disciple of his. When he heard the rumor that she possessed a mystical treasure, he even colluded with others and wanted to lay his hands on his own disciple, killing her and seizing her treasure. However, this time, the girl's luck exploded. Not only did she manage to avoid this calamity, when she was surrounded and attacked by the crowd, she suddenly gained enlightenment and directly formed her Azoth core. Instead, the people who surrounded and attacked her suffered the consequences of their own actions, as they were all wiped out. In a short 10 years, she managed to advance from Foundation to the Azoth core stage. A talent like this finally attracted the sect's attention. The girl was heavily nurtured by the sect, and she learned together with those geniuses with heavenly spirit veins. Although she had high-grade cultivation manuals and resources, because she did not have any background or backing, she was still the little cabbage that was bullied. It was as if the girl's body was plastered with come and hit me notes, and everyone wanted to go up and bully her. However, the girl did not care about these people's targeting and discrimination. Perhaps it was because no one had ever treated her well since young, so she did not have such thoughts. Instead, she got used to being bullied and bullied. Furthermore, even in this kind of environment, the girl actually did not grow crooked. She was still the little cabbage that was upright, with proper roots and red shoots. While dealing with the evil intentions of her fellow sect members, she worked hard in her cultivation. Until the sect she was in was attacked by heretic practitioners, the mountain barrier formation was broken, and a huge wave of demonic beasts attacked. However, it was such a coincidence that the few nascent soul cultivators and a soul formation supremacy that were in charge of the sect all rushed to a newly emerged mystic realm, and were not in the sect at all. The only people in the sect who could be considered as battle power were the few Azoth core cultivators. Although the girl was young, her sense of justice was bursting. She stubbornly fought the group of heretic practitioners to the end, and waited for the sect's management to return and rescue her. However, these heretic practitioners were not to be trifled with. Their methods were extremely vicious, and there were even those evil arts that could refine souls and devour souls. A lot of the disciples became timid, and only the proper and upright girl defended with her life. She even activated the sect's mountain barrier mystic treasure to stop the heretic practitioners. When the management returned, she was already on her last breath. Perhaps it was because her actions were too touching. The sect's sect master personally healed her injuries and took her in as a chamber disciple. He began to teach her diligently. With resources and backing, the girl spent 200 years to cultivate to late-stage Azoth core. Then, an ancient mystic realm appeared, and all the cultivators above Azoth core went to investigate it. The girl was one of them. However, they realized that it was a mustard seed space left behind by an ancient god. In that space, the girl suddenly awakened her bloodline of an ancient god. She directly formed her nascent soul, and rushed to nascent soul paragon. And her identity also surfaced. She was a legitimate descendant of an ancient god, and the younger sister of Forgotten God Palace's palace master. Her godly strength had even surpassed that of Forgotten God Palace's palace master. As a descendant of a god, the girl naturally could not stay in her original sect any longer. She was welcomed into Forgotten God Palace, and became the mistress of a palace. However, she did not live a blissful life, because the devil had arrived. Zhu Yao deeply felt that the god and devil races were definitely an unbreakable couple, and they were the kind that loved to kill each other. A devil was sealed in the ancient god's firmament space that the girl explored earlier. Taking the opportunity when the crowd entered, it immediately escaped. And it began to spawn a regular storyline of a devil. It was so bored that it went around doing bad things. Its final goal: destroy the world. And the girl Luo, the newly appointed descendant of a true ancient god who had a strong sense of justice, was naturally duty-bound to be sent out by Forgotten God Palace's palace master to save the world. Because she was one of the reasons why the devil was released, the girl fought especially hard. However, a descendant of a god was not equivalent to a god. No matter how hard she worked, how could she defeat the undying and indestructible devil? The cultivation world was defeated. More than 50 nascent soul practitioners and dozens of demigod practitioners were all defeated. In the end, the girl gritted her teeth and used her body as a sacrifice. Using her soul as a guide, she transformed into 5 mystic treasures and once again sealed the devil. The world was saved, but the girl died. Furthermore, her soul was split into pieces, and she was eternally imprisoned in the devil, unable to reincarnate ever again. Zhu Yao sighed. This could completely be considered as a heroic epic that could move one's heart to tears. This girl could truly be considered as a savior. However, the ending was a little too tragic. Zhu Yao could not help but sigh. Suddenly, the scene in front of her changed. The storyline had yet to end, and there was actually a continuation. Zhu Yao continued to watch seriously, and the more she watched, the sadder she felt. That stifling and suffocating feeling from before once again came back, causing an uncontrollable rage to rise within her. The scene displayed was the girl saving the world. 1,000 years later, she woke up. Probably because even the heavenly Tao felt that it had mistreated her. After sealing the devil for 1,000 years, the girl's soul slowly separated from those mystic treasures and began to gather. And then she revived. Though she had lost all of her cultivation, she once again stood in this world alive and well. This was the first time she felt the preciousness of life, and felt how much she missed everything in this world. It also made her feel that everything she had done was worth it. However, good people might not necessarily be rewarded. She died. Chapter 244. The reason why heroes were heroes was because they only lived in legends. The girl sacrificed her life to seal the devil, so everyone worshipped her, respected her, and treated her as their savior. Because she was already dead, and the dead could not compete with the living. No matter how high her reputation was, there was no threat. However, if she were to live, this situation would no longer exist. If her reputation was too high, it would definitely affect the other deity sects, and pose a threat to the people in their positions. On the surface, the various sects rejoiced over her revival. However, the selfish hearts of the people were faintly suspicious. If she were to live, then wouldn't there be a possibility for the devil to revive as well? The various sects feared the devil. After all, the battle back then had greatly damaged the vitality of a large number of deity sects, and it was impossible for them to recover within 10,000 years. If the devil were to make a comeback, the world would definitely not be able to withstand a single blow. They were worried and afraid. These emotions grew deeper and deeper, and they were filled with fear all day long. They even attributed the reason for this fear to the resurrected girl, Luo. Why did she have to live? Wasn't it great to seal the devil forever? Since she had already chosen death, why did she have to go back on her words and come back to life? As time passed, who would still remember that she had once saved the world? They all wished that she could return to those seals, so that they could stop the devil from reviving. Hence, in order to save the world, in order to stop the devil from reviving, the various sects joined hands, and before the girl could even feel her new life, they killed her in the name of justice. Then they devoured and refined her soul, splitting her soul into 5, and once again placed them on 5 mystic artifacts. When they were completely uncertain if the devil would revive, they killed the former savior of the world. The girl died. She died in the hands of the people she used her life to protect. Even Zhu Yao could feel the towering anger, and the stifling feeling in her heart was unbearable. For the girl, and for those foolish practitioners, She even wanted to rush forward and stop them. However, she could do nothing, and could only watch as the girl was killed. She watched as her soul was forcefully torn apart by the formation, and imprisoned on those 5 mystic artifacts. The scene in front of her changed, and she once again returned to the field of flowers. That hellish girl was still standing in the middle of the flowers, and her entire body was covered in blood red. However, Zhu Yao suddenly no longer felt afraid, because this was how the girl looked before she died. And the bloody scar on her face was the wound where her soul was sliced open. Why? She asked, tears of blood flowing from her eyes. I have never betrayed this world in the slightest, but why does this world treat me like this? Zhu Yao was unable to answer. The blood on the girl's clothes became redder and redder, and she seemed to have fallen into endless despair. Suddenly, the blood turned into streams of black gas that enveloped her whole body like smoke. Resentment. So this was the cause of resentment. Being treated like this by the world, how could she not hate? How could she not resent? Zhu Yao felt as though she was about to be drowned by the enormous sorrow and desolation, causing thoughts of despair to arise in her. It was as though everything in this world had already gone far away, and she felt as though she had fallen into an ice house. Even her heart had frozen, and she was no longer able to transcend. Even death had become an extravagant hope, and the thought of giving up on everything had arisen for no reason. Ting. A clear and crisp sound suddenly rang in his ears. The scene in front of him changed, and suddenly the world was filled with a familiar darkness. A QQ chat window popped up, and a few lines of text appeared on it. Realm Spirit, girl, how are you? Realm Spirit. Wake up, girl. Realm Spirit. Don't scare me. Come back to your senses. Realm Spirit. Young girl. Realm Spirit Zhu Yao. Realm Spirit. Princess Flat Top. Realm Spirit. Airport. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, and instantly, her face darkened. You're the airport, your entire house is an airport. Realm Spirit. Realm Spirit. Yo, brave girl, let's create a miracle together. Create your sister. Zhu Yao habitually retorted. Taking a deep breath, that feeling of despair earlier had already receded like the tide, and could no longer be found. Her emotions earlier were most likely affected by the resentment. She turned to look at her surroundings. Did I die again? Realm Spirit. No, girl. At the very most, you're just having an out-of-body experience. Out-of-body experience? Zhu Yao was startled. Then what about my body? Realm Spirit. Your body has already been controlled by resentment, and is currently in a state of deep slumber. You're saying I can still return? That was her original avatar. She had feelings for it. Realm Spirit was silent, and only after a while did he type out a line of words. Realm Spirit. Unless the resentment in your body is cleared. Otherwise, even if you return, you will still be devoured by resentment. Oh. Zhu Yao did not expect that the situation would be so severe. Realm Spirit. Ho ho, young girl, this mission seems to be too difficult. It's my mistake in arranging the work. Why don't we change to a more relaxing bug? Could bugs be separated into relaxed and enjoyable ones? Zhu Yao gave a scornful look. Forget it. Since I've already begun to fix it, then I'll just fix it till the end. Realm Spirit, eh? He seemed to have paused for a moment. Realm Spirit. Young girl, do you still want to continue dealing with resentment? Friend, do you need to top up your IQ? Do you need a dozen? Recharge once every 5 times, and you'll receive the money immediately? Scram. Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at him. I feel that I have most likely found a way to eliminate resentment. Realm Spirit. Hey, if you're going to retort, can you not type it out at the same time? Do you think I won't be able to see it just by adding a bracket? Ugh. Realm Spirit. Don't mind these details. Young girl, are you sure you want to continue with this bug? That's right. Regarding the specific method to eliminate resentment, I'm not sure yet. I need to personally verify it. Zhu Yao solemnly said. And I need your help. Realm Spirit. Oh, come young girl. Don't pity me just because I'm a delicate flower. Use me all you want. Will you die if you don't act stupid? Zhu Yao sighed. Ignoring his shameless words, she analyzed. Usually, in a game, if you want to fix a bug, you will have to patch it on top of the original foundation. However, if you encounter a bug that cannot be fixed, which is a fatal bug, then there's only one way. If you want to save it, then there's only one way, and that's to delete and reprogram it. Back then, when resentment entered my divine sense, I saw the source of resentment. I must say, she indeed has the qualifications to be resentful. And this resentment is basically impossible to eliminate. If you want to solve it, you have to start from the source. That's why I want to go to that world and find that girl. Realm Spirit did not reply, as though he was considering her suggestion. After a long while, the next line of words appeared. Realm Spirit. You want to eliminate her resentment and let go of her obsession towards the world. You can put it that way. Realm Spirit. But although her soul is still in the world, resentment has long left her soul body. In the underworld, it might not be affected by her soul. I have to give it a try. Realm Spirit. Alright, I believe you. Go, Pikachu. Pikachu, your sister. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She suddenly recalled something. Oh right, just what's wrong with my master? Why does he often turn into a child? Is it because he's affected by resentment as well? Realm Spirit. That's not it, young girl. There's always a price to pay for going against the heavenly Tao. What do you mean? Speak human language. Realm Spirit. He forcefully descended into the lower realm with the power of a higher deity, and then forcefully stayed in the lower realm. Naturally, the heavenly Tao will not tolerate it. You're saying that the reason why he fainted is because he stayed in the lower realm? Zhu Yao's heart tightened, and she was instantly filled with guilt. If not for her, why would her master, Realm Spirit? Ha, young girl. This is all because of love. As expected, men and women in love are all blind. Scram. Zhu Yao glared at him, and her heart was instantly filled with anxiety. Is there any way to solve this problem? No. This daddy wants to return. Realm Spirit. Don't be anxious, young girl. How can I not be anxious? That was her man. Realm Spirit. I'm saying the problem has already been solved. Zhu Yao was startled. What do you mean? The scene flashed, and suddenly, a video interface appeared. The scene displayed was exactly the scene after she fainted. Her master, who was dressed in white, was currently sitting next to her with a cold expression. Wang Xiuji was standing at the side. As though he had just woken up, his expression was not very good. As for ZMO was currently stuck in the wall. Looking at the angle and depth of where he was stuck, it was definitely her master who filmed him. Zhu Yao. How did my master wake up? Realm Spirit. Do you remember the pearl that the river of forgetfulness gave you? That was the purest source of water. The river of forgetfulness, that had yet to come into contact with any soul. It was able to purify all things, so as long as he carried it by his side, the heavenly Tao would recognize his existence, and naturally he would wake up. As expected, that pearl was for her master to use. Zhu Yao turned to look at her own master, and suddenly, she felt a little uncomfortable. Every single time, he would leave without saying goodbye. She was really mentally tired as well. However, if she did not go, who knew which world Realm Spirit would reincarnate her into? She might as well eliminate her resentment, and then return to her original avatar. Can I send him a message? Realm Spirit. Young girl, I'm not a postman. No sense of loyalty. Forget it, send me to the mission. Realm Spirit. Alright, young girl. This time, can you give me a more reliable avatar? Don't be as weak as trash, alright? Realm Spirit. No problem, young girl. A proper young girl. Let's go. Realm Spirit. Alright, young girl. In order to increase the success rate, I have decided to make some slight adjustments to the details. Good luck, young girl. Wait a minute. What adjustments did you make, hey? The scene flashed, and a familiar loading bar flashed past at light speed. In the next second, Zhu Yao sank into unconsciousness. She instantly had a premonition that she was about to be screwed. When Zhu Yao woke up once again, she was on a stone bed. Her entire body was stiff, as though she had been petrified. After spending a lot of effort, she finally managed to sit up. As she adjusted her body, she inspected her surroundings. This was a stone room, and it was completely sealed. There were quite a few formations that gathered spiritual energy inside, and the spiritual energy was very abundant. She sat for exactly an hour before her meridians were unobstructed, and her stiff body began to slowly relax as well. Taking a deep breath, she wanted to circulate the spiritual energy in her body, only to realize that her dantian was completely empty. The hell? What happened to the promised powerful avatar? She couldn't possibly have to cultivate from the beginning again, right? Wait a minute. It wasn't that simple. She calmed her heart and immediately looked into her body. She realized that although her body did not have any spiritual energy, her divine sense was as vast as the ocean. The hell, this divine sense was clearly at the pace of a demigod. Zhu Yao was instantly excited. So it was just a lack of electricity, and she finally did not have to cultivate from the beginning again. Hence, she immediately guided spiritual energy into her body. In an instant, the spiritual energy guiding formation in the stone room began to circulate wildly, and a large amount of lightning spiritual energy began to pour into her body. Lightning flashed in the surroundings, and as though a violent gale had passed through the room, there would occasionally be lightning crackling sounds, directly striking onto the stone wall. She did not know what material the stone wall was made of, as there wasn't even the slightest trace of it. The spiritual energy gathered by the formation was extremely limited, and in just a few moments, it had already been completely absorbed. It was basically not enough for her to recover her cultivation. However, after the formation stopped, even more spiritual energy was being transmitted up from underground, and it was endless. It seemed like there was still a spiritual vein hidden beneath this stone room. Zhu Yao instantly felt at ease, and began to absorb the spiritual energy peacefully. After a full 10 days, her empty dantian finally had enough spiritual aura. Her cultivation had also successfully recovered to the demigod level. Zhu Yao casually cast a dirt removal art on herself, and then, she immediately materialized a water mirror to look at her avatar's current appearance. There was no helping it. She simply did not have much confidence in Realm Spirit's character. A woman's face appeared in the water mirror. She looked very stern, and her entire person did not look very beautiful. She could only be considered to be upright. Her height was average, her clothes were average, her looks were average, and her chest was average as well. She looked like a female practitioner that did not have any special characteristics, and belonged to the type of face that would not be recognizable even if she was thrown into a crowd. Zhu Yao curled her lips. So be it if she was ordinary. Currently, she no longer had any hopes for this avatar, as long as she did not turn into something strange. She silently prepared herself mentally, and accepted this new avatar. With a wave of her hand, she kept the water mirror, and recalled the mission this time. Firstly, she had to obtain those 5 mystic treasures, release the miserable girl's remnant soul, and then have a good chat with her about life. Even if she could not eliminate her resentment, at the very least, she could send her to reincarnate. With her current demigod strength, Zhu Yao felt very confident. After carefully inspecting this stone room, she saw a formation on the right wall. It seemed like that was the exit. Zhu Yao did not hesitate, and immediately injected a strand of spiritual energy into the formation. With a loud bang, the entire right wall began to slowly open to the 2 sides. Before she could even take a step out, she realized an old man was standing outside the door. He had the cultivation of an early-stage nascent soul practitioner, and he was dressed in a blue robe as well. He even had a long white beard on his face, and he held a horsetail whisk in his hand, giving him a very sage-like appearance. A large group of disciples followed behind him. There were males and females, old and young, and they densely filled up the entire mountain slope at the entrance of the cave. Zhu Yao's heart trembled. What were these people planning to do? Were they going to fight? Seeing her come out, the eyes of the sage-like old man shone. Taking a step forward with a paw sound, his sage-like appearance was torn apart. He bowed down towards her, and with a loud voice, he said with a powerful aura, "This disciple greets old ancestor." When his words fell, a large group of disciples behind him knelt down, and in an instant, resounding cries resounded throughout the mountain. "We greet old ancestor." Chapter 245. When you had always felt that he was a qualified palace master, and a positive one at that. Even though the Forgotten God Palace he took over was a terrible mess, he still did not give up, and tried his best to lead the sect towards prosperity. No, towards the path of riches. Unfortunately, dreams were plentiful, but reality was bony. Even though Forgotten God Palace had the high and mighty brand of descendants of the primordial god race, it still could not withstand the weight of time. Originally, Forgotten God Palace, which relied on the addition of godly power, this almost cheat-like attribute, had always stood at the forefront of the cultivation world. However, due to the thinning of their bloodline in recent years, Forgotten God Palace's attribute enhancement had become weaker and weaker. Until now, other than the palace master, who still had a trace of godly power that he himself could not sense, the other direct disciples basically only had the sign of descendants of the primordial god race. In order to retain the godly power, the previous palace masters had unavoidably adopted some xenophobic measures, which resulted in an extremely bad effect. The most direct manifestation was that external talents could not be brought in, and the internal corruption had caused the overall quality of the sect to plummet. Until now, there were not many disciples that could be brought out. When he realized the severity of the problem, and began to accept the outstanding disciples from the outside, it was already too late. Putting aside the fact that disciples with good aptitudes were extremely hard to find, even if there were, they would have long been snatched away by the various sections. Especially after the great battle that affected the entire cultivation world, Forgotten God Palace had suffered even more heavy losses. Almost all the cultivators that could hold up the front had fallen in this battle. Out of the dozens of nascent soul cultivators, only 5 remained. Forgotten God Palace's strength once again plummeted, and they could barely lift their heads in front of the various sections. When Yu was so worried that he could not sleep at night. Yet the various sects still stabbed a knife into his heart at this crucial moment, and invited their Azoth core disciples to participate in the inter-sect tournament. Although it was called a friendly competition, when you knew that it was actually a gathering to test the strength of the various sections, this competition immediately revealed a problem. The 10 Azoth core disciples that Forgotten God Palace sent out were beaten like dogs. It was fine if they did not obtain a ranking, but not a single disciple actually entered the top 10. They could not even compare to normal first-rate sections. When you had practically vomited blood when he returned. After this competition, forget about being the leader. Most likely he would not even be able to keep his position as a first-rate sect, and would completely lose his right to speak. When you even had the thought of dying. Just when he was at his wit's end, at his wit's end, at his wit's end, a miracle had happened. A demigod spiritual light suddenly descended from the returning heaven forest at the back of the mountain. The entire Forgotten God Palace was enveloped by tribulation clouds, and the rumbling tribulation lightning actually struck for an entire 10 days. Then, a soul formation aura emanated from one of the stone chambers. A soul formation cultivator. There was actually a soul formation supremacy in the sky returning forest. After that battle, not a single divinity transformation cultivator could be found in the entire cultivation world, but here he was a living one. When Yu was so excited that his beard lit up, he gathered outside the stone room and personally welcomed the venerable one out of isolation. With a soul formation cultivator in charge, which sect would dare to bully them? The more when Yu thought about it, the more beautiful it was. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the venerable one in the stone room was pleasing to the eye. He came at the right time. You are the most beautiful cloud in the sky. I filled you with wine and made you stay. And what's weird? However, when the supremacy walked out of the stone room, he was dumbfounded. Who was this? Her face looked so unfamiliar. The returning heaven forest at the back of the mountain was a place for seclusion in the sect. Those who entered were all practitioners who were at the end of their lifespans, and were risking their lives to make a breakthrough. However, the majority of the disciples never returned, and those who came out were all in dire straits. It was an existence that was easily forgotten. However, this was a soul formation supremacy. In other words, she was at least a nascent soul practitioner when she entered. Yet, Why had he never seen her before? Wen Yu gritted his teeth. Forget it. The sect could not afford to lose this sovereign. Just treat it as a gift from the heavens. Hence he decided to go all out. With a thud, he knelt down and loudly shouted, "This disciple greets old ancestor." Thus, the beautiful young girl Zhu Yao, who had just gotten a boyfriend not too long ago, was called an ancestor just like that. Old ancestor, I wonder which blessed land your family wishes to have as your cave residence. Wen Yu cheerfully welcomed her. His smile was so wide that his eyes could not be seen. Old Zhu Yao, that please don't call me ancestor, alright? She still had to get married. You can just call me by my name. You must not. Wen Yu's expression turned cold, as he said with a stern look, there is an order of seniority. As the palace master of Forgotten God Palace, this disciple should set an example. Old ancestor, please do not reject me. He looked as though she was stepping on his dignity as a junior. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, as she silently endured it. If not for the fact that you're already so old. Just randomly choose a place, as long as you can live in it. She did not have any requirements regarding the place she was going to live in. In any case, her goal was those few mystic treasures. When Yu heard this, he did not bring her around blindly anymore, and immediately went to a mountain peak with green mountains and clear waters. She did not know if it was a coincidence, but that was the tallest of all the floating mountains. Beside it was the main mountain, and on the right was a forest. However, a few kilometers away, there was a mountain peak that was completely pitch black in color. There was not a single blade of grass or tree on the mountain, nor was there any spiritual energy surging out. Yet it was still floating steadily in the air. Zhu Yao was a little curious. What's that? That's the sword-seeking mountain. Wen Yu explained. Suddenly, as though he had thought of something, he said, in a while, it will be the day of the various sects searching for swords. When that time comes, I hope that old ancestor will protect my sect. Sword-seeking? What's that? Zhu Yao casually asked. Wen Yu was startled for a moment, as he looked at her a little strangely. Sword-seeking is naturally to search for weapons that are compatible with one's body, or materials for forging. Just how long had the old ancestor been in closed-door training for, to not even know about such matters? This sword-seeking mountain rose from the ground several thousand years ago, and there are countless materials for forging mystic treasures inside. However, because this mountain was born on top of my sect's spiritual vein, the weapons forged using the materials here are born with spirituality, and will choose their own masters. Before they find a suitable master, even if the weapon is forged, it will still return here, and wait for the fated person. Hence, our sect will hold a sword-seeking assembly once every 10 years. It's that amazing? Then wouldn't the other sects be dying from jealousy? After all, they would only come once every 10 years, while they were right at their doorstep. However, when he said that, Zhu Yao began to look forward to it a little. She might be able to use this sword-seeking assembly to understand the whereabouts of those 5 mystic treasures, and then borrow them to use. Even if they weren't willing to lend them to her, she could still snatch them. Zhu Yao stayed on the mountain for 5 days, and inquired about the current situation of this world from the mouths of the disciples who came to serve them. She wouldn't have known if she didn't hear it, but the moment she heard it, her entire being felt terrible. Initially, she had thought that Realm Spirit had given her a character with its own plot, but that was not the case. Not a single person in the sect knew of her at all. However, because the place where she appeared just so happened to be in the stone room at the back of the mountain, that palace master naturally classified her as a member of the sect. It was no wonder that old man refused to call her name no matter what. It wasn't that he didn't want to call her, but he basically didn't know her. He was also afraid of offending a demigod practitioner, so he could only flatter her like an old ancestor. As expected, those who could become sect masters were all 1,000-year-old old foxes. This was evidently a scam for her. After finding out the truth, Zhu Yao immediately went to explain to Wen Yu that she did not wish to stay in this sect. Wen Yu, however, stopped her with a face full of snot and tears. As he cried, he recounted his sorrowful history, from the establishment of the sect, to the sect's glory, and then to the current awkward situation, He hugged onto her thigh with all his might, unwilling to let go. A scene of a white-haired old man who was over 50 years old crying and shouting to stay, begging to be conquered. As a good young lady, she simply could not bear to kick him away. In the end, she still nodded. When you instantly became spirited. His waist was no longer sore, his legs no longer hurt, and he no longer hugged onto her thigh. His snot and tears flowed freely. I have yet to ask, what is Sovereign's Taoist title? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Yu Yao. Changing one's expression was definitely an essential skill for sect masters. So it's Sovereign Yu Yao. The old man respectfully bowed. For Sovereign to face the demigod tribulation in my sect, and to choose to stay in the sect, it can be said that you are fated with my sect. Forgotten God Palace will definitely not forget Sovereign's great kindness. Zhu Yao replied him with 2 words. Ho ho. Forgotten God Palace. If she did not remember wrongly, this should be Girling Luo's main family, the sect where the descendants of the ancient gods were based, right? Wasn't it really amazing in the scenario? Why was it in such a miserable state now? There wasn't even a single demigod sovereign in the sect. As though he saw through her doubts, old man, when you took the initiative to explain. Sovereign might not know this, but in that battle a few hundred years ago, our sect lost dozens of nascent soul practitioners, damaging our foundations. That's why we ended up in such a state. A few hundred years ago? Zhu Yao was startled. What kind of great battle could cause the death of so many nascent soul practitioners? Even dozens of nascent soul practitioners couldn't defeat them? When you sighed. How can the devil race be so easy to deal with? Devil race. Zhu Yao widened her eyes. A thought flashed past her mind, as she faintly felt that there was something wrong with her reincarnation this time. Sovereign did not expect that the devil race would still appear in this world, right? When you shook his head with a pained look. If not for the blood sister of the previous palace master, Palace Mistress Ing Luo, who risked her life to seal the devil race, how could this peaceful world still exist? She did not expect that in just a short few hundred years, the various sects had already begun to target our forgotten god palace. Wait a minute. Zhu Yao was a little confused, as she looked at the old man seriously. You're saying that Ing Luo sealed the devil race a few hundred years ago? That's right. When you nodded, lowering his head, he pondered for a moment. I think it's been a few hundred years. It should be around 900 years, right? The hell? She finally knew what was amiss. The girl Ing Luo gave birth to resentment 1,000 years after the devil was sealed. Yet Realm Spirit actually sent her to the time before Ing Luo was revived. Not only did she arrive in the girl's world, she had even passed through time, and returned to the past. Old man, then do you know where the girl? No, that Palace Mistress Ing Luo's body is? Of course it's on the god's sacrificial altar. He said with a matter-of-fact look. Only by sacrificing one's body can the ancient sealing art be released. Where's that place? When you pointed to a place in the south. It's right at the sacred lake behind our forgotten god palace. He turned around, and Zhu Yao's figure was no longer in front of him. There was only a white figure flying towards the south. It seemed like the sovereign was very curious about that savior. It seemed like he wouldn't be leaving for a short period of time. He instantly felt at ease. Zhu Yao headed straight to the place when you pointed at. In front of her was a clear pool of water, and the surroundings were filled with flowing formations. A blue-clothed girl was currently lying on top of the pool. Chains formed from spiritual energy were attached to her body. As expected, it was that girl from the storyline. She had yet to revive. She finally understood what the minute adjustments Realm Spirit was talking about were. He was adjusting the timeline. Back then, she said that she wanted to solve the problem from the source, but she never expected that Realm Spirit would really send her back to the source. The girl had yet to be betrayed by the world. The hell, it seemed like she had to adjust all of her plans. Initially, she had thought that her main mission was to collect those few mystic artifacts, release the girl's soul, and then conduct a psychological counseling session with a low success rate, so that she could let go of her resentment and properly reincarnate. From the looks of it, her main mission had become how to stop the world from betraying her and reverse her tragic life. At that moment, she felt that a huge wave of trouble was approaching. Right now, Zhu Yao had no choice but to stay in Forgotten God Palace. She did not know when Ying Luo would wake up, so she had to save her before the various sects found out. Otherwise, with a weak girl like her who had lost all of her cultivation, she could only be bullied by others. And those 5 mystic artifacts, she had to obtain them as soon as possible as well. Those 5 items were also a part of her misery. The psychological counseling trip to a different world instantly became saving that pitiful weak girl. This sour feeling was simply unbelievable. And the sword-seeking assembly that when you spoke of was about to begin in full swing 5 days later. The practitioners of the various sects had all gathered at Forgotten God Palace. Though Wen Yu was grumbling in his heart about the actions of these sects, on the surface, he still politely welcomed them. However, the number of people who came this time was especially large, and among them, there were many nascent soul reverends who were leading the groups. Rather than saying that they were here to search for swords, it would be more accurate to say that they were here to demonstrate their might. Evidently, they had ulterior motives. Wen Yu was rather composed, and did not immediately run up the mountain to seek help from Zhu Yao. Instead, he continued to passionately welcome the disciples of the various sections. Only when all of the reputable deity sects in the cultivation world had all arrived, and the leading practitioners of the various sects had all taken their seats, did he walk back into the palace. The various sects had evidently grown impatient from the wait. A practitioner immediately stopped Wen Yu, and immediately stated his intentions. Palace Master 1, Forgotten God Palace has protected Sword-Seeking Mountain for so many years, and it has truly been hard and meritorious. The sword-seeking event that happens once every 10 years is truly troublesome as well. Hence, the various sects have discussed, why don't we let the other deity sects manage the sword-seeking mountain from now on, so as to resolve Palace Master's worries. When you turn to look at him, Sword-Seeking Mountain was something that belonged to Forgotten God Palace in the first place, and it was held once every 10 years. It was only because the mystic artifacts within the mountain had the ability to choose their owners, and were unwilling to bury it, that the various sects were invited to enter. They were clearly here to snatch something, yet they still had to use the excuse of resolving Forgotten God Palace's worries. Wen Yu coldly laughed, and walked towards the main seat in the palace. However, his eyes suddenly shifted, and he did not sit on the main seat. Instead, with a wave of his hand, he had a disciple add another seat to sit on. Looking at the people present, and thinking of a certain person on the mountain, he instantly straightened his back. Chapter 246. Sect Masterly. I wonder which sect do you think this sword-seeking peak should be handed over to? Wen Yu purposely asked. Hearing this, that person thought that he had already agreed to hand over sword-seeking peak, and instantly smiled even more proudly. Hall Master Wen, in the current cultivation world, Clearflower sect is the strongest. Moreover, Sect Master Zhao of Clearflower sect has a late-stage nascent soul cultivation. It is more appropriate for Clearflower sect to be in charge. When you look towards the silent Clearflower sect Master Zhao Yang on the right, Sect Master Zhao also feels that sword-seeking peak should be handed over to Clearflower sect? Zhao Yang smiled and said slowly, if the sects trust me and feel that Clearflower sect can take on this heavy responsibility, then this Zhao will naturally not shirk. He had a humble expression, and the other sects became even more resolute, each of them having a confident expression that they should give him. The more Wen Yu heard, the angrier he got. This was obviously something that Clearflower sect had discussed with the other sects, and was just using the sword-seeking conference to bring it up, forcing him to agree. In the past he really had no way to refute, and under pressure he had no choice but to agree, but now, he laughed coldly. The angrier he got, the calmer his expression became. Sect Master Zhao is right. A place as important as sword-seeking peak indeed requires sufficient strength to guard it. Otherwise, it will be extremely easy to fall into the schemes of heretic practitioners and vile people. He intentionally emphasized the word vile people, and swept his gaze across the crowd. However, when he saw that everyone looked indifferent, he felt even more disdain in his heart. Don't worry, Hall Master One, Zhao Yang said with a solemn expression. Our sect will definitely do our best to guard this sword-seeking peak. I naturally believe in Sect Master Zhao's strength, but... Wen Yu's tone changed and his expression became awkward. Hall Master One, why don't you speak your mind? To tell you the truth, a few days ago, a senior of our sect who had been in seclusion for many years suddenly came out. She is also extremely skilled in the art of refining artifacts, and wants to refine a weapon that suits her. Wen Yu sighed. I saw that her aptitude was exceptional, and did not want to lose such a talent, so I handed the key to Sword-Seeking Peak to her. Currently, this Sword-Seeking Peak is still in her hands. If Sect Master Zhao really wants to share our sect's burden, you have to ask her first. Zhao Yang frowned. This was obviously Wen Yu's excuse, and he could not help but feel some anger. The sect leaders of the other sects who were standing by the side couldn't take it anymore, and stepped forward to criticize. Who is it? Call her out, and we'll reason with her. Exactly. This sword-seeking peak only opens once every 10 years. Why did you let her enter first? Even if you're a disciple of Forgotten God Palace, you can't be this casual, right? Just ask her to come out and hand over the key. How can the sword-seeking peak be handed over to anyone? Could it be that her strength surpasses that of Taoist Master Zhao? I'd like to see who has the guts to do so. Yes, let her come out. Everyone started discussing one after another. Yet Wen Yu had an unperturbed appearance. Instead, he looked towards the Clearflower sect's sect master. Fellow Taoist Zhao, what do you think? Zhao Yang smiled. I naturally wish to meet the person in charge of Sword-Seeking Peak as well. Wen Yu sighed. The show was done. It was time to serve the main dish. Thus, he did not decline any further. He called over a disciple and said, Go to Tianling Peak and invite the old ancestor down the mountain. Tell her that the sect master of the Hua sect wishes to see her. There's no need. A clear and cold voice resounded. The moment the voice fell, a demigod stage pressure instantly enveloped the entire great hall. The crowd who were still discussing earlier instantly quietened down. The nascent soul practitioners were still fine, but the other disciples could no longer withstand such pressure. As they knelt onto the ground, every single one of them widened their eyes in disbelief. A demigod stage sovereign. A white light flashed, and a figure suddenly appeared at the center of the great hall. I'm already here. Greetings to the old ancestor. Wen Yu especially gleefully took a step forward, and bowed towards Zhu Yao. The smile at the corner of his eyes was about to fly out. Zhu Yao's divine sense had actually been paying attention to the situation here the entire time. Hence, the moment she heard Wen Yu calling for a disciple to invite her over, she knew that the time to act cool had arrived. Hence, the pressure from her body did not have the intention to push back either. Instead, her tyrannical aura was fully released, and she especially took care of the Clearflower sect's sect master on the right. She even intentionally walked towards him, and said with emphasis on every single word, I heard that you want to meet me? Zhao Yang was drenched in cold sweat, and it dripped down. He had to use all of his strength in order to not kneel down under that pressure. In an instant, his intestines were already green with regret. Since when did another demigod stage sovereign appear in Forgotten God Palace? Why didn't he know about it? Sovereign, please forgive me. This humble one did not know that Sovereign is the person in charge of Sword-Seeking Mountain. Hence, I should be the one paying respects to Sovereign. Zhu Yao sat down on the highest seat in the great hall, and swept her eyes across the entire hall. With a single glance, everyone had a constipated face, as though they had just swallowed shit. With a flip of her palm, a small sword that was as thick as a fingertip floated in her palm. It seems like everyone has a lot of opinions towards me managing Sword-Seeking Mountain. Oh well, if you feel that you're more suitable, then try your best to look for me to take this eye-opening key. How could the crowd dare to take it? Wasn't this clearly offending a demigod stage practitioner? They would be blasted into smithereens, right? One after another, they expressed that this was just a misunderstanding, and could not help but blame Clearflower sect who instigated the various sections. Since that's the case, then I shall keep this key. She was just wondering why old man Wen Yu insisted on giving her the key yesterday. so it was to slap their faces at this moment. Seeing that she did not pursue the matter, the crowd heaved sighs of relief. But Zhu Yao's tone changed. It's too troublesome to open sword-seeking mountain once every 10 years. And I don't have the time to keep waiting to open the door for you either. So the timing of this sword-seeking mountain has to be changed. In the future, it will be opened once every 50 years. Everyone's faces instantly darkened. What was the meaning of going for wool and coming home shorn? This was it. Yet, they were in the wrong in the first place, so it was not good for them to refute her. They could only glare at the culprit, Clearflower Sect, with resentful eyes. Sect Master Zhao's heart felt even more stifled. The pressure of a demigod stage was still present on his body, so it was already incredible that he was able to stand properly. How could he still have the mood to care about the feelings of the various sects? Hence, a fair and above-board resource-snatching assembly was left unsettled under Zhu Yao's half-coercion and half-threat. Putting aside the fact that the various sects did not manage to gain any benefits, the sword-seeking mountain that was supposed to be held once every 10 years was even changed to once every 50 years. They basically could not feel any more stifled. If no one has any objections, today's sword-seeking assembly shall begin. When you walked out, and basically did not give the others any time to react. He looked at Zhu Yao gratefully and said, "Old ancestor, please open the sword-seeking mountain's formation." Zhu Yao nodded. She did not have the patience to fight with this group of people either. She immediately brought the crowd and flew towards the mountain peak, that was completely pitch black in color. Only after taking a closer look did she realize that this sword-seeking mountain was more like a spiritual or mine. However, what was produced inside was not spirit stones, but various materials used to refine artifacts. Various formations were laid down on the entire mountain peak. At first glance, it looked like a slightly ugly mountain, but after taking a closer look, one would realize that the surroundings of the mountain were filled with floating talismans. Zhu Yao was a little surprised at the formation techniques of this world. They seemed to be extremely profound. The large group of people stopped at the foot of the mountain. Zhu Yao injected a strand of spiritual energy into the key in her hand, and in an instant, the key emitted a dazzling golden glow, flying straight towards the mountain peak. A moment later, the entire mountain shook like a three-dimensional image, and then, the illusory image flashed, revealing its true appearance. Different from the pitch-black scorched mountain from before, in front of them was actually a mountain filled with various mystic tools and spiritual swords. There were even quite a few spiritual swords dancing in the air in the surroundings. The spiritual artifacts of Sword-Seeking Mountain are for those who are fated to obtain them. "Everyone, please enter." When Yu loudly said, only then did the disciples of the various sects walk into the mountain with excited expressions. In this sword-seeking mountain, the ones who were truly happy were most probably the low-ranked disciples who were only allowed to enter the mountain every 10 years. Only the nascent soul practitioners who were leading the groups of the various sects were left. Though there were many spiritual artifacts in Sword-Seeking Mountain, a person could only choose a single weapon in his or her lifetime. Those who had already chosen one would not receive the recognition of a new mystic tool when they entered again. "Old ancestor, aren't you going in to take a look? When you came over." Speaking of which, even he himself was a little surprised. This sovereign Yu Yao seemed to be especially poor. Even the flying spiritual sword beneath her feet was something she asked for from him. He was really suspicious of how she managed to survive until the demigod stage. Amen. Zhu Yao nodded. Thinking that she indeed needed a weapon as well, she looked around and coincidentally, there was a piece of black ore at the side. "I'll just have to refine one myself. I'll choose this one then." The corner of Wen Yu's lips twitched. "Old ancestor, aren't you going in to choose? The materials in the mountain all possess spirituality, and they will be more compatible with their owners." Why did she have to choose the most ordinary piece of black ore? This was completely unbefitting of her lofty status. And the materials in the mountain, no matter if its quality or quantity, are plentiful. "That's true." Zhu Yao nodded. "This piece of black ore is indeed a little small, and it's not enough to refine a sword. Then, let's go in and choose a larger piece of black ore again. Can you let go of this black ore, hey?" Zhu Yao, however, had already entered the mountain in a flash. She did not have much interest in high-grade materials. With the way she was courting death, no matter how good the materials were, they would all be wasted. As for weapons, they were fine as long as they were convenient to use. Black ore was a commonly seen material. After walking for a distance, she found a piece of suitable size. Just as she was about to reach out her hand to pick up that piece of black ore, suddenly, a white round rock rolled over from the side, knocking away that piece of black ore, and appeared next to her hand. Zhu Yao frowned, and did not think too much about it. She thought that it was because of the wind, and that it was just a coincidence. Hence, she took another 2 steps forward, and continued to pick up that piece of black ore again. Just as she reached out her hand, that piece of white rock once again rolled over. With a paw sound, it knocked away the black ore once again. Why did she feel that this rock was doing it on purpose? Zhu Yao frowned, and continued to pick up that piece of black ore in disbelief. As expected, that piece of white rock once again rolled over. This time, it collided with it even more ferociously, instantly knocking the black ore 1 to 2 meters away. The white rock quietly stopped in her hand, looking as though it was telling her to hurry up and pick it up. Chapter 247. It knocked against the tree a few times, and seeing that it was basically unable to move the withered tree, the entire rock was in trouble. It anxiously rolled to and fro next to the withered tree, leaving behind streaks of imprints. A moment later, as though it had suddenly thought of a solution, it rolled a few meters back, and then, it suddenly accelerated and rolled downwards, fiercely crashing into the tree. Then with a paw sound it bounced up, and using the recoil, it jumped over. However, at this moment, Zhu Yao had already successfully picked up the black ironstone. White rock. With a creak, it stopped at her feet. As though it was stunned for a moment, the entire rock instantly turned gray. The rock that was initially snow-white like jade, instantly turned into a heavy gray, as though it had received an injury that the rock could not endure. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She could not be bothered with this rock. Keeping the black ironstone, she turned around and planned to return. That white. No, the gray rock paused for a moment, and then it immediately followed her with a grumble. Like a little tail, it rolled and knocked away the rocks, plants, and weeds at the side, following her closely. Stop following me. Zhu Yao sighed. Not only did this rock have a spirit, it had evidently awakened its own intelligence. Even if you follow me, I won't choose you. Hurry and return to your mountain. The city was very dangerous. The gray rock clattered, and turned into a dark gray, looking as though it was about to split apart. However, it still did not give up, and continued to follow behind her with a grumble. With every step she took, it would roll a little. With every 2 steps, it would roll a little. Even if it encountered obstacles, it would still think of ways to follow her footsteps. Just why was it so stubborn? Zhu Yao was out of ideas. She watched as that stupid rock, in order to avoid a big tree, was about to roll into the small river at the side, and she could not help but reach out to grab it. That rock was stunned for a moment, and then it was evidently overjoyed. With a swoosh, it once again returned to its snow-white color, and it grew even brighter, and it even rubbed against her palm like a spoiled child. She felt that there was a need to talk to it about life. How to be a rock with integrity. Oh, little rock, I know you've awakened your own intelligence, and you can understand my words. Zhu Yao said with a stern look. I came in here to look for artifact refinement materials. Do you understand artifact refinement? You need to melt rocks, and your body will even split apart, you know? You've already gained sentience. If you continue to cultivate, you might even become a spirit. Why should it be refined into an artifact? If it was refined into a weapon, even if it became a spirit, it would still be a sword spirit. Don't give up on your dignity as a stone spirit. The stone stopped rubbing her palm as if it was frightened by her words. Do you want to be split into 4, or do you want to become a happy rock spirit? Go back to the mountain and continue your cultivation. Don't come out and wander around in the future. Don't let other cultivators find you. The stone was completely silent. It seemed like it had listened to him. Just as Zhu Yao was about to put it down and let it happily roll around. However, the stone gave off a creaking sound as if it was breaking. A crack suddenly appeared on the jade-white stone, and it seemed to be spreading across the entire stone. What are you doing? Zhu Yao was shocked. Don't take things too hard, hey. Creak. The rock continued to crack. Zhu Yao was dumbfounded. It couldn't have cracked itself in front of her just because she said that one had to melt rocks to refine artifacts, right? Do you have to be so serious when chatting? Creak. The rock continued to crack. Don't crack. The hell? This guy was committing suicide. All right. I'm afraid of you. I'll bring you back, all right? The stone paused and finally stopped cracking. It then continued to rub against her palm like a spoiled child. Zhu Yao. This sword search lasted for an entire day. As the sect's mascot, she had no choice but to guard the mountain for the entire day. Only when the various sects retreated did she bid farewell to Wen Yu and return to her residence on the mountain peak. The facilities in her cave residence were rather complete, and there was a specialized artifact refinement area. He took out the black ironstone and the strange stone and placed them on the table. Then he made a hand seal and ignited the smelting furnace. He controlled the fire's spiritual energy and burned the furnace until it was almost done. Only then did he turn around to take the black ironstone. However, she saw that the black ore that was initially placed at the center of the table had rolled to the right side of the table. Half of the rock was already suspended in midair, and beside it, a smaller white rock was desperately trying to push it off the table. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She reached out to pick up that troublemaking white rock and stared straight at it. What are you doing? The white rock paused. The entire rock suddenly began to turn pink, as though it had been caught doing something bad. Zhu Yao sighed. She once again placed the white rock at the center of the table. She picked up the black ore that was about to fall and threw it into the smelting furnace. Then, she circulated her spiritual energy to envelop that rock. Suddenly, a loud bang sounded from behind her. That white rock had unknowingly rolled off the table and was currently rolling towards the smelting furnace's entrance, looking as though it had forgotten about its life. What are you doing? Zhu Yao was shocked as she hurriedly grabbed it back. You're crazy. You'll die if you roll in. The white rock struggled for a moment, as though it wanted to throw itself into the furnace. Stop messing around. I didn't bring you back to refine you into an artifact. The rock was startled. In an instant it turned gray, as though it was extremely sad. Once you develop a spiritual consciousness, you'll die if you refine an artifact. Do you understand? The rock continued to deepen. Zhu Yao sighed. Don't worry, I won't throw you away. Its color finally looked a little better. In her hands, it turned towards the furnace's direction, and then turned towards her, as though it was seeking her assurance. Enough, I will bring you along in the future as well. Even if I don't refine you into an artifact, I will still bring you along. Only then was the rock satisfied, and it quietened down. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. Why did she feel as though she had picked up an ancestor? Forget it. Seeing that she had once been a rock spirit as well, she decided to focus on refining her artifact. She began to concentrate on refining tools, and white stone also obediently leaned against her leg, sticking to her like a little tail, following her up and down. A day later, Zhu Yao finally completed the final step of carving formations, and a 7th rank peak grade artifact was completed. Due to the material limitations of the black ore, she could only refine it to this grade. The white rock was still leaning against her leg, not moving an inch away. Zhu Yao felt that her leg had turned numb from the pressure. Keeping her spiritual sword, she picked up the white rock on the ground. She glanced at the cracks on the rock, and instantly recalled the days when she was used as various stepping stones by a certain floor master, who had no morals. She could not help but send a strand of spiritual energy into the white rock's body, in an attempt to help it recover. The moment the spiritual energy entered, it was suddenly bounced back by a huge force, causing her palm to turn numb. Zhu Yao had a shocked look. How could a rock that had just developed a spiritual consciousness contain such powerful and pure spiritual energy? It was even able to bounce her spiritual energy away. This was completely not a divine art. Unless it wasn't a rock in the first place. Zhu Yao's heart sank as she looked straight at the white rock in her palm. Little rock, just what are you? That rock did not reply, and simply happily rolled back and forth in her palm. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, sat down in a lotus position, closed her eyes, and immediately sent a strand of divine sense into the little rock's body. What she saw was a dazzling golden world. Golden light that resembled a warm sun could be seen everywhere. And the rock was actually filled with metal spiritual energy. And the closer she went to the center, the purer the spiritual energy became. It was so dense that it looked as though it was about to materialize. There seemed to be something floating at the center of the rock, and it was in the shape of a ling. Before she could even see it clearly, she suddenly heard a crisp and childish voice resounding in the depths of her heart. Chick. Zhu Yao trembled as she suddenly regained her divine sense. With widened eyes, she looked at the snow-white rock in front of her with a face of disbelief. Such a familiar formula, such a familiar smell. You're a metal spirit. Chick, the same voice once again resounded in the depths of her heart. The white rock happily circled around her, and circled around her. The hell? Zhu Yao could not help but scold. She actually encountered a metal spirit again. Wasn't this Xiao Yi's cheat? Why the hell did it appear here? No wait, Xiao Yi and this place were basically not from the same world. Since the spiritual energy in that world could turn into spirits, then naturally, the spiritual energy in this world could as well. However, looking at the looks of this metal spirit, it should have just gained sentience not too long ago. Metal spirit, have you always been in Sword-Seeking Mountain? Could it be that the reason why all the swords and materials in that Sword-Seeking Mountain possess sentience, and were able to choose their own masters, was because of the influence of the metal spirit? Chick. Chick, what's the meaning of chick, hey? Forget it. In any case, she did not expect this fellow who only knew how to act cute to help her. The metal spirit was like a cheat to practitioners with metal spirit veins. However, to Zhu Yao who possessed the lightning spirit vein, it was really useless. She kept the metal spirit into her storage pouch. Now that she had a weapon, it was time for her to head out for her mission. She organized the important clues she had gathered. The 5 mystic artifacts that sealed the devil were placed in 5 of the most dangerous, yet also the safest places. One of them was not far from here, in an abyss deep in the ocean. Zhu Yao calculated the time. There were still a few decades before the girl would revive. She could try her best to find the mystic artifact before she woke up. Old ancestor, something bad has happened. A few anxious voices suddenly sounded from outside. What's the matter? Old ancestor, Sword-Seeking Mountain. That disciple's voice grew even more anxious. The palace master sent me to invite you over. Something big has happened in Sword-Seeking Mountain. Zhu Yao immediately undid the seal on the artifact refining room and walked out. The moment she reached the entrance, she sensed a spiritual energy disturbance coming from the south. Chapter 248. Zhu Yao immediately flew to the main mountain. Wen Yu was already pacing around anxiously, and the moment he saw her, he immediately came to welcome her. Old ancestor, I don't know why, but this sword-seeking peak suddenly erupted. If this continues, I'm afraid it will affect our sect. Activate the protective mountain formation. I'll go take a look. Zhu Yao instructed, and then flew towards sword-seeking peak on her flying sword. She faintly guessed that the rampage of these spiritual swords might be related to the metal spirit in her body. The closer she got, the more she could feel the sword chi of those spiritual swords. She laid down a defensive enchantment and stopped less than 5 steps away from those spiritual swords. She took out her gold spirit. Sure enough, the spirit swords that were still restless just now suddenly stopped, and that piercingly cold sword chi also slowed down quite a bit. Jinling, it seems like you can't follow me anymore. Ji. The rock tilted to the right, seemingly confused. These swords are sentient. Zhu Yao pointed to the front. These swords had definitely gone berserk, because they realized that the metal spirit was missing. You're the one who gave them spirituality. Once you leave, they'll turn back into ordinary magic tools. Unless you have a way to calm them down, I can't take you with me. Gee. The metal spirit jumped up and instantly became excited. It screeched at the swords flying in the sky. GG. GG. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. No matter how many times it cries out, it's useless, right? These spirit swords obviously didn't want the metal spirit to leave. Chick. The metal spirit let out another long cry. Suddenly, those floating swords seemed to lose their momentum and fell down with a swoosh. It was as if it was raining spiritual swords. In a short while, all the spiritual swords were gone. Even the piercingly cold sword qi had disappeared without a trace. Damn. It really worked. So the common language of the weapon world was Jixing? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Honestly speaking, she really did not want to bring the metal spirit along. This thing was basically a super cheat. Whoever picked it up would become a bug. It was better to stay on sword-seeking peak. After all, with so many spirit swords around, unless the metal spirit was willing, even if someone discovered it, no one would be able to take it away. But it just had to stick to him. I don't have a gold spirit root. He sighed deeply. He could only put away the metal spirit. She had easily dealt with the spiritual sword's rebellion. Wen Yu's eyes were practically glowing when he looked at her. Zhu Yao took the opportunity to suggest going out for a trip. As for the reason, the world is so big. She wanted to see it. Wen Yu's face collapsed, and with a face full of snot and tears, he howled once again. Old ancestor, you can't leave. If you leave and abandon Forgotten God Palace, what will we, who are all alone, do? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She sounded as though she was a heartless man. All right, I'll be back as soon as possible. Old ancestor. He still wanted to say something, but Zhu Yao's figure flashed, and she nimbly slipped away. If she were to continue talking to him, she wouldn't be able to leave. Wen Yu's heart was full of grievances, but before he could pour it out, the other party disappeared. Suddenly, a sense of crisis arose in his heart. It seemed like this sovereign Yu Yao still did not have any sense of belonging towards Forgotten God Palace, which was why she left so decisively. No, he had to think of a way to make her stay here forever. Yes, everything is for the sect. Zhu Yao madly flew several hundred kilometers, and only when she saw a large body of water did she slow down. Wen Yu had unintentionally revealed that when the girl Ing Luo used her body as a sacrifice to activate the ancient sealing technique, she acted as a vessel to carry the devil. The 5 mystic artifacts were scattered to 5 different places by the residual energy of the sealing formation. One of them was in the vicinity of this sea region. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, cast an art, and turned into her modern appearance. She then concealed her own cultivation, and only revealed her Azoth core cultivation. She then headed towards an island at the center of the sea. The island was extremely quiet, as though there weren't many people around. That's not right. Didn't Wen Yu say that this island was a large-scale deity cultivation market? There should be a lot of practitioners here, so why was it so quiet? She headed towards the center of the island, and the number of people in her surroundings gradually increased. However, they were all hurrying towards a certain direction, and they even had strange excited looks on their faces. Fellow Taoist. Zhu Yao stopped a foundation practitioner, and politely asked, I wonder where you guys are heading to in such a hurry? That foundation practitioner was a little annoyed when he was stopped. However, seeing that the other party's cultivation level was higher than his, he could only reply with a sullen voice. The treasure-gathering pavilion's auction is about to begin. We are naturally rushing over to participate in it. If we are any later, we won't be able to see it. Treasure-gathering pavilion? Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. Just as she was about to clarify, that foundation practitioner had already walked far away, as though he would not be able to make it in time. Was that auction really that interesting? Compared to the auction, she was more worried about how she was going to find that mystic artifact. Turning around, just as she was about to head to another place to take a look, a green-robed man walked towards her. He said with a gentle smile, Fellow Taoist, aren't you going to take a look? This is a grand gathering that only happens once every 100 years in the cultivation world, you know. It has always been filled with countless rare and precious treasures. Zhu Yao sized up this youth. He looked to be about 20 years old, and his cultivation level was at the early stages of foundation. He was dressed in a green robe, and there was a symbol of a copper coin embroidered on his sleeves. She came to a realization, and immediately said, "You're a prop? Strip." He had a puzzled look. "What I mean is, you're someone from that whatever treasure-gathering pavilion, and you're here to pull in business." His expression stiffened for a moment, and then immediately recovered. "Ho ho, fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand. I just saw that you looked unfamiliar, so I wanted to introduce you." "Thank you." Zhu Yao turned around and left. "I'm not interested, fellow Taoist." That youth grew anxious, and once again blocked in front of her. "This auction only happens once every 100 years, you know?" Zhu Yao spread out her hands. "I don't have any money." She was as poor as a doornail, all right? "Fellow Taoist, you must be joking." His face looked as though she was joking. "My treasure-gathering pavilion has always had a wide network, and we are well informed. We have been on this island for several thousand years, and the treasures we have obtained are countless as well. Even if fellow Taoist doesn't attend the auction, it would be great for you to take a look at the others." Well informed? Zhu Yao was startled. Then, could she inquire about the location of that mystic artifact? Her interest was instantly piqued. "Then let's go take a look. Fellow Taoist, please." Zhu Yao followed after that youth, and only then did she realize. There was indeed a large-scale market at the center of the island. However, it was concealed by a formation in the surroundings, and it was hard to detect it from the sky. The moment she stepped past the formation of the market, the world in front of her had completely changed. Practitioners were walking to and fro everywhere. On both sides were bustling streets, and at the sides were various shops selling talismans, medicinal pellets, and so on. However, all of them had the symbol of a copper coin at the entrance. It seemed like that treasure-gathering pavilion had opened a chain store. That person led her into a store that sold mystic artifacts. There weren't many people in the store. 2 people dressed in the same attire as the youth welcomed them, and bowed towards the youth. However, he waved his hands, and personally brought her around. It seemed like this person. And he was even the leader. "I wonder how I should address fellow Taoist. My surname is Lu. A single character, Gua." Zhu Yao casually made up a story. "Lu Gua? What's so strange?" "So it's fellow Taoist Lu." He still politely bowed. "This one is Zhen Yuan. This is the store that has the most complete collection of mystic artifacts in treasure-gathering pavilion. Fellow Taoist Lu, feel free to look around." Zhu Yao followed him as they walked, and was not interested in these mystic artifacts. In any case, they were all 5th ranked and below. In her heart, she was thinking of a way to inquire about the situation of that sealing mystic artifact without leaving a trace. "Fellow Taoist Lu, feel free to take a look. This one is not boasting, but in this world, top-grade mystic artifacts can only be found in my treasure-gathering pavilion. Furthermore, there are many of them, and we have everything you wish for." Zhu Yao swept a glance at him. This person sure knew how to advertise, as he had everything she wished for. Let her take a look at the one used to seal the devil though. The hell? That pitch-black fan, and the sealing runes were even flashing on it? She wasn't seeing things, right? "Fellow Taoist, you have good eyes." Zhen Yuan immediately came over, picked up that fan and said, "This is one of the mystic artifacts used to seal the devil back then." "It's actually true, hey? Isn't this a little too casual?" Is this really the mystic artifact used to seal the devil?" "Of course it's real." His face was filled with sincerity. "And it's even a 5th-ranked mystic artifact. Though due to the sealing arts, it is unable to unleash the full strength of a 5th-ranked mystic artifact. This is one of a kind in this world. 5 sets of devil mystic artifacts, it's very meaningful. How about it, fellow Taoist? Do you want to have one? It's only 100 mid-grade spirit stones, you know? You won't suffer a loss if you buy it for 100, and you won't be fooled if you buy it for 100. Is it really alright to sell a mystic artifact used to seal the devil so casually? Do you have to be this casual, hey?" Where's your integrity, hey? Zhen Yuan saw that she did not reply for a long while, and gritted his teeth. How about this, fellow Taoist? If you really like it, I can give you a 50% discount. 50 mid-grade spirit stones, how about it? Zhu Yao felt that her worldview had to be adjusted. Fellow Taoist, this is already the lowest price. I can't go any lower. Why don't you just tell me, how much is it? Fellow Taoist, we have to do business as well. Any lower, and we won't be able to pass. Zhu Yao carefully inspected that fan. The sealing runes on it faintly emitted out divine might, and within the fan, there was even black devilish aura circulating. This was indeed one of the 5 mystic artifacts. She never expected that she would find her target so quickly. She wanted to buy it, but the main point was, she really did not have any money on her. Earlier, she left in a hurry, and had completely forgotten to advance her wages to Wenyu. After pondering for a moment, she immediately summoned the flying sword Wenyu gave her. How about this? I left in a hurry, so I didn't bring any spirit stones. Though this flying sword of mine is a 4th-ranked mystic artifact, it's a high-grade one. How about I use it to exchange for this fan of yours? Zhen Yuan was startled. A hint of brilliance flashed past his eyes, but it immediately disappeared without a trace. Smiling at her, he said, Fellow Taoist, exchanging your 4th-ranked mystic artifact for my 5th-ranked one isn't too good, right? Then forget it. Zhu Yao turned around and left. Did he think she was blind? This mystic artifact had evidently been placed here for a very long time. The reason why it could not be sold was most probably because it sealed the devil, making it unusable. How could it still be considered as a 5th-ranked mystic artifact? Thank you, dear Xinyu Juanxi, for receiving the fox demon's Heshabi as a reward. Chapter 249. Wait a minute. As expected, Zhen Yuan called out to her, and said with a troubled look, Fellow Taoist, my shop indeed doesn't have the rules of bartering. Why don't we do this? Why don't you head to the back hall to rest first? After I ask my boss, I will give you a reply? All right. Zhu Yao happily agreed. Following Zhen Yuan, they arrived at a courtyard after several turns, and sat next to a stone table. After Zhen Yuan instructed her with a few words, he retreated. Zhu Yao sat for exactly an hour, and in the middle, a person who looked like a waitress came to serve tea and snacks. After that, there were no other movements. Zhu Yao faintly felt that something was amiss, and just as she was about to stand up and ask someone, suddenly, the formation beneath her feet shone brightly, and a large number of vines emerged, instantly binding her tightly. What's with this situation? You human practitioners are really stupid. Zhen Yuan suddenly appeared in the courtyard, and looked at her with a complacent smile. On his shoulder stood a little demonic beast that looked like a rat and a bird. He waved his hand. Hand it over. That demonic beast instantly turned into a flash, and returned to Zhen Yuan's shoulder in an instant. Its mouth, however, was biting onto her storage pouch. The hell, so this was a black shop. Zhen Yuan took the storage pouch, and weighed it in his hand. If you're sensible, then take the initiative to remove the imprint on this storage pouch. I will then let you die a little more painlessly. Just who are you? Zhu Yao solemnly said. Why is that mystic artifact used to seal the devil in your hands? Me. The man smiled. You dare to barge into Illusory Realm Island. Yet you don't know who I am? Illusory Realm Island. Zhu Yao was startled. There's actually someone who doesn't know of Illusory Realm Island. Zhen Yuan's smile grew even deeper. With a wave of his hand, the small courtyard that was still fresh and elegant earlier, as though it was fading away, began to change. The stone table turned into a stone covered in moss, and the trees turned into man-eating flowers with their bloody mouths wide open. And those houses had all disappeared, turning into a dense forest. How is this possible? Zhu Yao widened her eyes. Though she had suppressed her cultivation, her divine sense had always been paying attention to her surroundings. She actually did not realize that everything was an illusion. Zhen Yuan coldly laughed. When you appeared in the sky, I had already noticed you. The moment you land, you will definitely be struck by my illusion art. What's up with those human cultivators? She clearly saw so many people on the street, and each of them had a different cultivation base and appearance. She also said to someone that if it was just an illusion, it was impossible to imitate something like spiritual power. They are all true human practitioners and not illusions. Zhen Yuan patted his clothes without a care in the world. A true human cultivator. That's why I say you human cultivators are too stupid. You clearly know that this sea region is dangerous, yet you still deliver yourself to us. Zhen Yuan gave her a disdainful look. The moment they heard that there was a treasure being auctioned here, they all rushed over like a swarm of bees. Thus, I casually made up this illusion, and had them experience the day of the auction over and over again, trapping them in this illusion forever. After they die, even their souls would not be able to escape. This way, everything they have will be mine. It turned out that those people were the souls of the deceived practitioners, and the entities condensed by the illusions. No wonder her spiritual awareness couldn't detect anything unusual. I wanted to use the same method to deal with you. Unfortunately, your luck isn't good, and you just had to refuse to go to the auction. If you don't enter the formation core, my illusion won't be able to deal with you. So I had no choice but to personally snatch it. You trapped so many practitioners, just to snatch their mystic tools and mystic treasures? He lowered his head to look at the storage pouch in his hands and kept it. Who asked you to have so many treasures? I have seen it. Back then when you were flying on your sword, you were using a peak grade 7th rank mystic tool. Although there are many 7th rank mystic tools, peak grade mystic tools are extremely rare. Since you've already delivered yourself to me, how can I miss it? I don't think so. Zhu Yao looked straight at him. No wait, it's it. The reason you trapped these practitioners is most likely to absorb their life force, right? Zhen Yuan was startled. A hint of panic flashed past his eyes, and he suddenly said angrily, "A bunch of nonsense. How can I possibly be interested in the life force of humans? Is that so?" Zhu Yao coldly laughed. "Earlier, you mentioned us human practitioners twice, which proves that you're basically not human. And no matter if it's demons, spirits, or beasts, mystic tools are completely useless against them. You trapped so many human practitioners. Isn't it to absorb their life force to raise your cultivation? Could it be that you're raising them for fun?" His expression sank, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. In an instant, he materialized a few icicles and threw them towards her. "Although you know, I can't let you live." With a twist of her hand, Zhu Yao summoned a ball of fire. In an instant, the vines that were entangling her were turned into ashes, and even the icicles that were flying closer, under the high temperature, turned into water and evaporated. "You didn't eat those snacks?" His face was filled with shock. Snacks? Zhu Yao recalled for a moment, and only then did she recall that the person who looked like a prostitute had served them. "Is that poisonous?" "I'm sorry, it's been a long time since I've eaten anything other than the food my master made, because it's too hard to eat." Her stomach had long been pampered. The corner of Zhen Yuan's lips twitched, as he was showered with a loving expression. So what if you can use mystic arts? You're still going to die here today." He coldly snorted. His robes fluttered without any wind, and his hair began to fly wildly as well. His cultivation, which was merely at the foundation stage earlier, suddenly began to rise explosively. Azoth core nascent soul, and actually broke through to the demigod stage. In the end, it stopped at the early stages of demigod. Evidently, he had concealed his cultivation earlier. In an instant, the pressure of a demigod filled the entire island. "An Azoth human practitioner, let's see what you're going to use to fight against me." "Wait a minute." Zhu Yao sighed, and released the suppression on her own cultivation as well. The pressure of a demigod human practitioner was immediately pushed back. Why? His face was filled with shock. "How's that possible? You too?" Ho, I know how to conceal my cultivation as well." Zhu Yao's hands moved. Raising her hand, she summoned her own spiritual sword, and then slashed it over. "Enough nonsense. If you want to fight, then come at me." Only then did Zhen Yuan regain his senses. In a flash, he dodged her attack, and in the next moment, thousands of tree vines drilled out from the ground, entangling towards Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao dodged in a flash, but those vines seemed to have eyes of their own, as they followed her wherever she flew to. Zhu Yao had no choice but to fly higher and higher, as she cast an art to summon flames to burn those vines. However, just as she burned one, even more came pouncing over. In a moment of carelessness, her right leg was entangled by a tiny vine. She turned around and slashed it with her sword. In an instant it exploded. Zhu Yao simply felt a sharp pain on her leg, as a large amount of venom flowed out from the flower bud. Half of her pants were completely corroded. She hurriedly summoned spiritual flames to burn that half of the vine. Yet she was still injured. Her leg was dyed red, and it really fucking hurt. It's useless. You definitely don't possess the fire spirit vein. Your flames are basically unable to keep up with the growth speed of these vines. Zhen Yuan smiled arrogantly, looking as though victory was within his grasp. Zhu Yao was instantly enraged. Mama's egg, you can burn anything, but you actually have to burn my clothes. Master isn't by my side. This old lady only has this set of clothes to keep up appearances. Yet you still want to burn it. Her fury instantly rose, and in an instant, she was so furious that she wanted to chop someone up. She no longer cared about the plants and flowers, as she immediately cast an art and cast heavenly descent. In an instant, thousands of lightning bolts came pouncing down, blasting the entire island until it was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Zhen Yuan was instantly dumbfounded, as he simply could not believe his own eyes. Why you're lightning? It's too late to know now. Zhu Yao waved her hand, and an especially thick lightning bolt charged straight at him. It struck right onto its target. The vines around Zhen Yuan instantly turned into charred ashes, and they instantly fell from the sky. With a poo sound, he puked out a large mouthful of blood. His eyes darkened, as he suddenly cast a wind-type art. Blowing up the sand on the ground, he then blew it towards Zhu Yao. In a flash, he turned into a ray of green light, and was about to head towards the horizon. You want to run? Zhu Yao erected a defensive barrier to block the incoming sand. At the same time, she swung the spiritual sword in her hand, turning it into a long whip formed from lightning bolts. In an instant, it coiled around that ray of green light. With a swing of her hand, she forcefully pulled it back, and it fell onto the ground. A few bolts of lightning descended, and he completely lost the strength to retaliate. Stop. Zhen Yuan no longer had the arrogance he had before, as he shouted for her to stop with a flustered look. Raising an item in his hand, he loudly said, "Let me go, otherwise I will destroy this mystic artifact." In his hand, he was holding onto the fan which had a portion of the devil sealed within. "Don't come over, otherwise I will destroy it." Zhu Yao stopped and frowned. Zhen Yuan was joyous, as he thought that this threat was effective. "Didn't you come here to find this? Don't force me into a life and death struggle." The moment his voice fell, a ray of white light shone next to him. An item flew out from the storage pouch he snatched from Zhu Yao earlier. Chick, a resounding sound resounded. He simply felt his hand burning, and he subconsciously loosened his grip. In the next moment, that fan had already flown into Zhu Yao's hands. Good job. Zhu Yao caught the fan and the metal spirit that flew over. Chick 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 chick. The metal spirit happily rolled around in her palm. Being praised, it was so happy, so happy. When Zhen Yuan saw that both escaping and threatening were useless, his face instantly turned green. Gritting his teeth, he did not know what he did, but his entire body began to emit out a green glow, and even the entire island began to tremble. The ground, which was still charred black earlier, began to emit out a large amount of thorns. The long green thorns emitted a cold glint, and they were even dripping with purple liquid. Large and terrifying man-eating flowers drilled out from the ground, and with their mouths wide open, they looked as though they could choose their prey at any moment. Zhu Yao had no choice but to fly into the sky, only to see that Zhen Yuan's entire body was already surrounded by a green glow, and its size was growing larger. In an instant, it had already occupied a sixth of the island. It seemed like he had already thrown caution to the wind, and was planning to fight her to the death. Now he wanted to reveal his true form. As expected, a quarter of an hour later, the green glow dimmed, and a gigantic demonic beast the size of a building appeared on the ground. It looked very much like a gigantic toad, and its 4 limbs were crawling on the ground. However, on its back there was a gigantic purple bud, and it was even faintly emitting out poisonous gas. This appearance was a little similar to an object she had seen in cartoons in the past, the wondrous frog seed. However, this one was a little uglier. It opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous gas, and the entire island was covered in a purple poisonous gas. Zhu Yao once again cast an art, summoning countless heavenly daos, instantly dispersing the poisonous gas. However, the flower bud on the back of the demonic beast suddenly opened, turning into several vines that swung towards her. These were completely different from the vines from before. This time, they were evidently much faster, and she was having a hard time dodging them. Just as she dodged one, another one came swinging straight at her, striking straight onto her defensive barrier. She even felt a pain in her chest, as though it was about to shatter. Zhu Yao tightened her grip on the sword in her hand, and in an instant, purple lightning filled the entire sword's body. With a wave of her hand, she sliced off one of the vines, and then, she turned around, wanting to dodge the remaining ones. However, a beast's roar suddenly sounded from behind her. Croak, as expected, it's still a frog. A black figure instantly pressed down from above her head. Zhu Yao's heart clenched, yet, she realized that she had nowhere to retreat to. That gigantic frog was pressing down, and she had already made preparations to summon her sword intent. Just as that demonic beast was about to come closer, and was about to squash her into a meat patty, that gigantic figure suddenly tilted, and with a plop, it landed next to her feet. As though it was possessed, it rubbed against her feet with an intoxicated look, and called out, "Meow, Zhu Yao." What the hell was going on? Zhen Yuan, who had transformed into a gigantic frog, was startled as well. With a swoosh, it fiercely leapt a few steps back. It looked at her with a terrified look, as though it did not understand why it was acting abnormally earlier. What mystic art did you use on me earlier? Like hell she knew. Evidently, you were the one who went crazy, right? The situation after that was developing in a strange direction. Zhen Yuan, who had transformed into a demonic beast, seemed to have suddenly activated some sort of hidden attribute. As long as its beastral body approached her, it would mysteriously turn into an infatuated beast in a second. It would meow in all sorts of ways, begging to be petted and hugged like a monkey begging for survival. However, in the next moment, it would regain its senses, and then it would leap away regretfully. Going back and forth like this, it would never get tired of it, as though its spirit had been split. Zhu Yao. She turned to look at this beast that was constantly running back and forth. First, it approached her. Meow meow meow. Then it ran a few steps away. You beast, what did you do to me? She was panting for it. This situation, why did she feel that it was a little similar to the world favorable impression ability from before? However, the effective range seemed to have shrunk. However, back then, when she was in her human form, such a situation did not happen either. Could it be that it was only effective against beast-shaped demonic beasts? Wait a minute. Back then, when she was squashed to death by that stupid dragon, she seemed probably, did not turn off the world favorable impression ability. Then, she suddenly felt that her entire being was unwell. Meow. I beg for a pat. I beg for my fur to be smoothed out, alright? The ingenious frog seed was about to rub against her body. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. You don't even have fur, alright? Smoothing my ass. She did not like toads in the slightest, alright? Especially one that emitted poisonous gas. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. Chapter 250. All of the man-eating plants on the island instantly turned into scorched earth. The poisonous gas dispersed, and the culprit beast let out a barbecued smell. Zhen Yuan was struck to the point where its 4 legs were facing the sky, revealing its white belly. Its gigantic figure shrunk at a speed visible to the naked eye as well. In just a few moments, it was already the size of a regular puppy, Zhu Yao's strike was basically merciless, instantly shattering its inner core. Its cultivation would definitely fall. Zhu Yao walked over. Its forepaws twitched, flipping over. Trembling, it laid on the ground and begged for mercy. Great deity, please spare my life. This little beast knows its wrongs, and will never dare to do it again. Zhu Yao frowned, and coldly said, Where did you go wrong? My mistake is. Its figure trembled. This little beast had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai, and offended Great deity. Great deity, your fortune is as great as the heavens. Please do not bicker with this little beast. Spare this little beast. It cried out loud, and its little body was even more so, trembling like a leaf that was being blown by the wind. It was truly pitiful. Zhu Yao sighed. I won't kill you. Zhen Yuan was joyful. Raising its two grape-like black eyes, its face was filled with joy. But I can't let you go either. Zhu Yao's tone changed, and Zhen Yuan's face paled. Zhen Yuan, you don't even know what you did wrong. What makes you think that your actions can be forgiven? No, I really know my wrongs. I've repented. It tried its best to explain. Zhu Yao coldly laughed. The only thing you regret is that the person you met was me. You only regret being caught by me. You only regret messing with me. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with you imprisoning the souls of these practitioners. Zhen Yuan was stunned. If you truly repent, you wouldn't be begging me for mercy today. Zhu Yao said word by word. That's why I can't forgive you. The reason why I won't kill you is because I don't have the authority to decide a person's life or death. You're a 9th-ranked demonic beast, and you have already cultivated into a human form. You entered the world and learned the way of humans. Yet you forgot your purest heart. In order to cultivate, you fed on the life force of mortals. You are not really asking for forgiveness from me, but from all the people on this island who died, because you sucked the life force out of them. If I spare you today, then the sin of killing these people will also be on me. I'm also a murderer who connived with you. Zhu Yao's expression turned cold. She instantly cast a mystic art, and a gigantic formation instantly enveloped the entire island. She slowly said, Zhen Yuan, I won't kill you, but I will imprison you on this island forever. You will never see or touch anyone again, just like the souls you've trapped. Only when you truly repent will you be able to transcend. No. He suddenly became agitated and struggled to crawl towards her. He couldn't see anyone and couldn't touch anyone. What was the difference between him and a ghost? You can't do this to me. I really know that I was wrong. You clearly have an aura that beasts like. Shouldn't you be protecting me? Why? Since you have the courage to make a mistake, you have to have the pressure to accept punishment. Punishment? Why am I the only one being punished? He began to shout with all his might. I was able to stay here for more than 1,000 years, so how could those human practitioners of the cultivation world not sense it? They were the ones who allowed me to do this. They were the ones who asked for it. It's basically not my fault alone. Zhu Yao did not waste her breath. The formation immediately descended, and Zhen Yuan instantly disappeared from the ground. Various runic characters floated in the air, and in less than a few moments, they disappeared without a trace. Zhu Yao sighed. An unclear emotion rose in the depths of her heart, and she felt a little uncomfortable from the stuffiness. Perhaps, the demonic beasts she had met before were all too simple. They were either kind to her to the end, or extremely vicious to her. They either wanted to eat her the moment they met, or they wanted to stick to her the moment they met. Hence, in her heart, demonic beasts were all simple and direct. There wouldn't be so many twists and turns. However, Zhen Yuan was different. When it came to demonic beasts, its thoughts and actions were more like a human's. She had always felt it was strange. Why would a demonic beast like it be interested in the mystic artifacts and treasures of human practitioners? In the beginning, it simply wanted to snatch her mystic artifact, and it even used it as a gimmick to lure people into it. She pondered. Behind it, there was no lack of shadows of human practitioners. There was even a possibility that the various clans and sects were involved. Everyone knew that this region of the ocean was dangerous. However, this treasure-gathering pavilion had evidently existed in the cultivation world for a long time. Not just here, It most likely had branches in other places as well. Zhen Yuan merely snatched treasures, and then transferred them to other practitioners. It absorbed their life force, while various mystical treasures could be seen in the cultivation world. Zhen Yuan was right. It was not that the human practitioners of the cultivation world did not know about all of this, they simply let it be. Everything was because of benefits. Zhen Yuan was in the wrong, and the other practitioners who made use of it, or even let it be, were similarly in the wrong as well. Zhu Yao suddenly felt a little dismal. Clearly, these so-called practitioners were no different from ordinary people. Whether it was for fame, benefits, or cultivation, they fought to the death. However, because of the lofty title of deity practitioners, they seemed to have rationalized everything. They could do bad things with peace of mind, yet they were still able to ascend to the higher realm and attain eternal life. Just what kind of world was this? This so-called Tao, what kind of Tao was it walking? Why was it that she could not see the slightest bit of positive energy, and only saw ugliness and destruction? Under such a deformed Tao, it was very normal for something like resentment to be produced. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and suppressed the feelings of disgust towards this world that were faintly rising from the depths of her heart. Circulating her spiritual energy, she formed hand seals, and chanted the art of rebirth. A moment later, a large formation appeared in the sky above the island, emitting out an endless golden light. In less than an instant, rays of white light slowly rose from the ground, and began to rise towards the horizon. These were all the souls that Zhen Yuan had been trapped here for thousands of years. Though Zhen Yuan was sealed, and could no longer imprison them, most of the souls had been trapped here for too long, and could no longer enter the underworld. Hence, she could only send them on their way. The number of white lights increased, and like a meteor shower during the day, they slowly flew towards the sky, before disappearing in the end. The entire island was enveloped by this white light. After spending exactly half an hour, the last ray of light finally rose and disappeared. It could be seen just how many souls were imprisoned here. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and then retracted the formation. The art of rebirth was a very simple mystic art, and the amount of spiritual energy it consumed was not much either. However, it could not last for half an hour. Adding that she had expended a large half of her spiritual energy to deal with Zhen Yuan earlier. Zhen Yuan was a 9th-rank demonic beast, and was about to take half a step into 10th rank. If not because she had the lightning spirit vein which naturally countered demonic beasts, she really would not have much of a chance of victory. After sending these souls away, she was already tired to the point where her limbs were a little soft. Just as she was about to sit down and adjust her breathing, the mystic artifact which sealed the devil in her hands suddenly shone. Something white floated out from it, and then it disappeared without a trace in a flash. Zhu Yao simply felt the back of her hand turning cold. In a flash, she actually saw the figure of a woman. Why would a woman's figure appear on this fan? The hell? It was that miserable girl. Zhu Yao was startled. She could not be bothered to rest, and immediately flew her sword in the direction of Forgotten God Palace. According to the original plot, the girl's soul would only return to her body several decades later, and she would awaken. However, with the addition of Zhu Yao, this butterfly, she could not be sure if an unforeseen event would occur? No, wait, an unforeseen event had definitely occurred. She suddenly recalled that when Zhen Yuan placed down a soul-trapping formation on the island, while trapping the other souls, did it also trap the 1/5 of the girl's soul? That was why the girl did not wake up even after so long. As for what happened after, there was a possibility that the weapon had left the island in the end, or Zhen Yuan had ascended, and only returned after losing the power of trapping souls. That's right. That white figure earlier was 1/5 of the girl's soul, and the direction it disappeared in was coincidentally the direction of Forgotten God Palace. Currently, it should have already returned to the girl's body. Zhu Yao grew even more anxious, as she frantically circulated her spiritual energy and flew back. The moment she arrived at Forgotten God Palace, she sensed an obvious spiritual energy fluctuation in the direction of the back mountain. Even if she was far away, she had already sensed it. Zhu Yao's heart clenched. It was too late. If the people of Forgotten God Palace were to find out about this, the entire cultivation world would know about the girl's awakening. At that time, it would be a never-ending tragedy. What should she do? Zhu Yao thought of a countermeasure, as her line of sight turned towards the sword-seeking peak at the side. Got it. Metal spirit. She took out the rock from her pouch. Chick. The metal spirit rubbed against her hand. Can you make those swords and sword-seeking peak go berserk once more? Chick. Make the commotion a little bigger, and exaggerate it a little. Chick, chick, chick. It rolled forward, and made a nodding motion. All right, then head to sword-seeking peak. Zhu Yao tapped on the rock. When this matter is over, I will come and fetch you. Remember, do not hurt anyone. Chick. Zhu Yao raised her hand and cast an art. The metal spirit turned into a ray of white light, and flew toward sword-seeking peak. In just a few moments, the entire sword-seeking peak was in an uproar. Countless spiritual swords flew out, and began to wildly dance in the air. As though they had gone mad, they sliced rocks and chopped trees. Every single one of them could be called a commotion. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, as she silently wiped off her sweat. This was a little too exaggerated, as though it was an ongoing project. However, she had to admit that she heaved a sigh of relief. The sacred lake was located in the same direction as this sword-seeking peak, and they were merely a kilometer apart. With a commotion like this, Forgotten God Palace would most likely think that the mountain had gone berserk again, and would not notice the resurrection of the girl in the sacred lake. Turning around, she flew over, only to see that the formation above the sacred lake had already begun to crumble. The chains that were initially binding it had already broken apart, and the lake water was beginning to surge. The girl was slowly rising up. The formation shone brightly, however. Cracks began to appear on the formation above it. An illusory figure that looked exactly the same as the girl was currently merging with her body. Most likely, this was the 1/5 of her soul that had escaped from that mystic artifact. And looking at the situation in the lake, the moment the soul returned to her body, the girl would wake up. Zhu Yao immediately set down layers of concealment formations in the surroundings, to prevent others from discovering the commotion here. Then, she cast an art, and without completely destroying the formation, she helped the girl's body to escape from the lake. An hour had passed, and that illusory figure had finally completely merged with the girl's body. The cracks on the formation above the lake had disappeared as well, and the girl slowly rose up. Her hair fluttered without any wind, and her clothes fluttered in the wind. That beautiful face of hers began to show signs of life, revealing a few hints of redness, making her look even more soul-stirring. A moment later, she slowly opened her eyes and the corner of her lips gently rose. With a faint and light smile, the entire world seemed to have lost its color. Even though she was of the same gender, Zhu Yao was dumbfounded by this sight as well. Even if she were to be described as a celestial being, it would not be able to describe this heaven-shaking beauty. For a moment, she forgot about time and the world around her. What remained was her heart throbbing as she looked at the girl who did not look like a real person slowly walking over. She lightly opened her vermilion lips, and a voice that sounded like an aureole flowed out. Your esteemed mother, which bastard son of a bitch threw this old lady into the water? Patter. She felt as though she could hear the sound of her dream shattering. Yet, the girl was still holding onto the corner of her skirt with one hand, as she looked at the lake full of water with a disgusted look. My grandpa, this old lady hates wet skirts the most. If this old lady finds out who threw me here, I will curse him to be impotent for the rest of his life, and his entire family will be impotent. The contrast in this scene was so great that it made one speechless. So there's actually a living person here. The girl finally noticed Zhu Yao, who was at the side of the lake, and sized her up for a moment. It's just that you look a little ugly. Zhu Yao, that this girl's tragedy in the first half of her life was caused by her mouth, right? It definitely was, right? Yo, brother. The girl waved her hand to greet her, and then ran towards her. Just as she took a step forward, she suddenly tripped, and with a splat, she fell from the center of the formation, falling head first into the water. She began to frantically wave her hands in the water. Save. Save me. I don't know water. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. With a wave of her hand, a gust of wind blew past, instantly pulling the drenched girl out. Her face was filled with fright. Where was the image of a noble and elegant fairy? She looked like a naked youth, and her entire body was emitting out a thick stench of a loser. Thank you. She spat out a mouthful of water, and panted heavily as she laid on the ground like a corpse. She looked as though she would not be able to recover in a short period of time. After panting for a whole 5 minutes, she then turned to look at her, with a joyful look. It's all thanks to you, big brother. Otherwise, this old lady would have drowned to death here. I never expected that this lake is so small. Yet the Miao water is so deep. The hell was big brother? I'm a girl. She sat up, sweeping a glance at her from head to toe. Her line of sight then stopped at her chest, with a stop-joking expression on her face. The hell, small breasts are still breasts. I am a woman. She gritted her teeth. She suddenly stood up, and suddenly reached out her 2 claws. With a splat, she pressed onto the soft flesh on her chest, and began to rub it. This was the first time in her life that someone was assaulting her chest, and it was even from a motherfucking girl. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Thinking about it, she felt that she was at a disadvantage no matter what. She definitely could not tolerate this. Hence, in a fit of passion, she reached out her claws and pressed onto the other party's chest as well, only to feel a wave of turbulent waves. She had lost. Wait. Why were the 2 of them assaulting each other's chests here? The girl finally released her hands. Rubbing her aching chest, she voiced out suspiciously. You're so flat. Are you sure you're a girl? Do you have an opinion? Zhu Yao glared at her. Do you want me to take off my pants for you to see? Sure. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.